There is an exit there, and I would like you to join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First of all, a public comment period. If anybody wishes to speak, if you wish to speak on either of the public hearings, one on stormwater and the other on the cap, it might be smarter to wait until those subjects come up. Anybody wish to make a general public comment? Come on, Rip.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
In spite of me calling you Rip, you probably should introduce yourself.
Peter Ripperger, Superintendent of Highway, and thank you for that comment. Basically, two comments. My first comment I'd like to thank the board and extend everything that you did through Sandy for us. And the cooperation was just unbelievable. Peter have been out there constantly through the storm. So I want to say thank you. But most important is how the town pulled together on that. Every department worked very hard to make this all happen. And I just want to extend my feelings to that and all the people which had to put up with, as we all did. To me, it was very important to watch the volunteers, Adam Oates, and I know I'm going to miss certain names. Joe Tanzi that came over and gave ice out every day. So basically, I just really want to say thank you to all and watching this town pull together on a hardship like that and putting all our differences aside. So just want to say thank you on that for all your efforts, because you worked very hard on this.
You too, Pete.
And the other thing I'd like to mention, it's really more of a budget item, but please keep in mind as the budget's being done, I really would appreciate if we can get our missing person replaced, Andrew Llewellyn, who left us. I had no feeling that we were going to lose him in next year's budget. It's made a real hardship. Even through the storm removal process, we can only put out 3 crews versus 4. And it's going to kill us, hurt us in the snow removal line. So please, that was not, I put in for it, and I know Peter knows I put in for it, and I know we have to do budgetary crunks, but that drops the department down to the level of 7. And we really need that other one. It makes a world of difference. And I think, Peter, you've seen it. I think we all have, and I do know we have a budget crunch. And with the savings that we did under Andrew this year, I thought we could throw that forward maybe, or we can talk about it. Please do not make it a bad issue, because we really need that to get through the rest of this winter and stuff. Please keep an open mind on that. I would appreciate it. Let me know. Other than that, I will be quiet and sit down for a while. Thank you very much. No, don't smile about that.
All right. Thank you, Peter. Anybody else? In that case, I'm going to move on to communications. I have a letter here from Lee Blum. I'm not going to read the whole of it, but in a very cogent way, she suggests that fees for a generator are a little bit excessive. I suspect Anne feels that we should review them, particularly for wetland permits needed for generators when the wetlands are not on her property.
It looks like your concern is also more around just the process of applying for a permit rather than the fee.
Yeah, maybe I'm interpreting what she said in my office. What she said in my office was rather more about the money than the process.
Okay.
I think this combination, I agree with both of you, and I think we did discuss something as far as when you're doing something like a generator on just a little pad, the wetland process would be a lot simpler. So I think, we were moving in that direction. Let's just make sure after we get through this budget process, we can, we go back to that.
I really agree with that. I think it's time we got back. I ran on this in part, and it is something I've done very little about since I was elected. I'd like to move on to the consent agenda. The building department report. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda as submitted.
Second. Seconded by myself. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
We have received the Town Justice Court 2011 audit. There is truthfully nothing very exceptional in this document. And I suggest that we, and I want to move a resolution acknowledging its receipt. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
There's nothing notable in terms of changes over the position last year or anything like that.
Not really.
Yeah.
Is this work that we'll do for August?
All in favor?
Aye.
So I just want to note, though, that there was some discussion about or misperception in some of the recent literature about the towns not collecting fines. I mean, this audit by the state shows $143,286 collected by Justice Seedorf and $124,755 collected by Justice Simon. So to the extent there was any misperception about fines not being collected, the state says they are.
Well, all right, let's go on a second. Our court is shown by this audit to be in excellent order in
Right.
terms of moving business through.
You bet.
That may strike you as the norm, but I assure you, if you journey through Westchester and
It's
were to
not.
look at other audits, you would not find this is the norm, and that we have a very excellent court organization, which we should be pleased about. But we should also thank both the judges and the clerks for running it that well.
Here, here.
Right.
Agreed.
The planning board has asked that we give them approval to do their required coursework online via webinars instead of actually being lectured to for 3 hours, or whatever hour it is.
I think we ask a lot of our volunteers to spend the time to go out on the site walks, to go out and go to the meetings, and I think webinars are becoming more and more popular as long as they're approved webinars by the continuing education requirements as they're showing here. I don't see any reason why that would be
Is this something we have to approve?
Yes, yeah, we have to approve it. So I would like to make a motion to approve the planning board's use of online webinars.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I have a letter here from Joan Dooley in which she resigns as the dog control officer. I was quite honestly somewhat sad about this, but seeing as Joan has looked after my dogs many a time and is a more than competent and in fact an exceptional person when it comes to dealing with dogs. However, she is determined to resign effective November the 23rd, and
I think she's done a great job. I totally agree with you. Above and beyond, not only dogs. So
yeah, not only dogs,
Not only
camels,
dogs, yeah.
horses, and anything
done,
else which has
yeah,
got loose in the
She's done a
town.
great job.
She's going to be sorely missed. She's a great asset to this town, and we all owe her a certain level of debt. So thank
So
you.
I'd like
Thank
to
you, Joan.
propose a motion in which we both accept her resignation and thank her for her very excellent service over
Second.
the years.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Janet, would you like to leave your town clerk role for a second and tell us about your proposal for a replacement?
Well, it's Christine McKenna, and she lives locally. She lives right on Spring Street. Has a dog. She's a dog walker. Has come recommended by Joan. She'll report into the town clerk's office as well as Frank Secret's office, and he wrote a letter to that effect as well, approving the choice.
Discussion of employment is executive session.
Okay.
The appointment is public, but discussion on the personnel matters is executive session.
All right, I'll postpone it to executive session, the appointment of a new office. Next, storm debris removal. I believe the tradition in this town is quite simply not to. And to leave it to the individual homeowner to take care of their own debris. It appears, although this time FEMA is going to pay for 90% of removal costs. That's a heavy percentage, and one which the people of this town have already paid for via their federal taxes. So I thought we should at least consider, in fact, removing their debris with this year. And I have drafted probably a far from perfect, looking on my left, announcement to the public.
All right, where'd you get the 90% number from?
I got 90% from the county
Is it 90% of approved costs or 90% of all costs?
of all costs.
I doubt it, but okay. And do we have a budget for that?
Nope.
Do we have, okay. And they just
So
want
the
to trust us, or
10%.
they want a pre-approved budget?
No, they do not want a pre-approved budget.
That would be unusual as well.
They,
Why don't, I think Leo attended the meeting, am I correct?
I would think, unless you know definitively, I would think it's 90% of their approved costs.
That's right. It's not going to be everything. That's why I heavily suggest we do a budget and get that pre-bless off on what they're going to pay us back. So we're saying 90%, and we go and say 90% of X dollars, and it turns out to be a net 36%, we're going to be in a bad way. So why don't we figure out how much we think it's going to cost to do that, just preliminarily, and trot it by them.
okay.
You may have had more in-depth
All right.
conversations.
I had a specific conversation about this. On this particular item, nobody really knows what it's going to cost. The best estimate I can come up with Peter, is roughly 200 grand.
That includes time-hour utilization of the men?
Actually, Frank, what that means is outsourcing about 3
Yeah.
other groups into this
Okay.
place, correct, blitzing the area.
Okay, so the contract costs
There'll be
plus,
contract costs, removal costs, and that's such, depending on the length of time that they're gonna spend.
okay, but I want to capture our personnel costs, but I also want to capture capital equipment utilization.
Right,
Depreciation.
if I may speak on this, at this
Yeah,
moment. FEMA
feel
says-
free.
Excuse me. I was at the same meeting we all were down in Westchester. Anything that the town adheres to, equipment costs, labor costs, for the first 30 days of the program, they will pay us back in full use
Okay.
of our normal labor hours. After 30 hours, they're willing to pick up the
After 30
overtime
days.
rate.
30 days,
30
30
days. And equipment use.
I'm sorry,
Cost
say it
of the
again.
Equipment.
Percentage?
30 days.
At 30 days, they'll pick up, I didn't hear what you said after that.
Right.
Overtime.
We don't know where the long term is unless Peter knows how many days on that. That we don't have. And at this point, whether the state will pick up the other 10%, we don't know that at this point.
According to the county, I've talked to Jan about this, mainly. And who's the guy who works with it? Dennis?
Yes, Dennis DeBorno.
And Dennis. And their belief, based on all the documentation from FEMA, which they've sent me, is that they will pay on all costs from outside contractors, outside after the 30 days, and also on all overtime costs incurred by the town.
Yes.
Yeah.
But after 30 days, they will no longer
Straight.
pay straight time. And that's the clear message I'm getting from those two.
Yeah, you might.
We've got our
When he's
first
talking to them
meeting,
again.
we've
Right.
got our first meeting with the our FEMA representative.
Tuesday, I believe, Frank.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's our FEMA rep?
Hernandez,
Is it a
Gonzalez Hernandez or Hernandez Gonzalez? One or the other.
It's a
Hector.
contracted rep?
Hector Gonzalez.
Hector Gonzalez, sorry.
He's coming Tuesday morning.
This is 30 days starting from when?
Excuse me.
Next Tuesday, yeah.
Okay.
30 days starting from...
When the department started collecting, which would have been,
So we start the clock.
Day after the storm.
30-day clock starts, you can't stop and start, so 30 days from then, that's why we're constantly picking up. Okay, everything we do is storm related, so they can be built back.
So, since the storm, so in other words, we only
But it
have...
stops in 30.
we
Yeah.
have relatively few days
It's
left
about 21 days
in which we
now.
can
Yeah, you
build
got
straight
another
time.
week.
Yeah.
That's why
So we only have a week. During that week, they basically pay everything
For our
basically
staff.
paying,
for our staff. What about these?
Yes, at
What
this
about this
moment,
whole
yeah, and all
outside
our equipment
contractor
costs.
thing?
We could do outside contracting after the 30 days.
yes, that's when they open that up for that, Peter. So, I mean, we went out to bid for chipping and stuff, so we had those people available, but you need to blitz the area and hit it hard and fast, but
So we want to have the residents actually get things stacked up and ready to go, so when we get
Yes.
through,
there's a whole procedure
Yes.
Bedford goes through. It has to be. It cannot be just thrown out there and dragged
Yep.
out of the woods and that type of stuff. Correct.
The wording that I put in front of you, gentlemen, depends heavily on Bedford and New Canaan. And there's no pride of authorship with me, I've just grabbed what they wrote, what those two towns wrote.
That's fine. I mean, the notice, there's nothing wrong with the notice. I'm just concerned about the money.
But see,
Nothing wrong with the
How
notice.
surprising.
Bedford has a DPW, numerous people.
Yeah.
And I think they shred and they do their own debris over on West Road.
Yeah.
So, but then they come in the department.
North Salem and Bedford are doing it, obviously New Canaan is doing it.
And
I
just
don't know about Pound Ridge.
has said it last week, no, at that point, but they're holding off on that, keeping in mind that I think Lewisboro was one of the hardest hits
yes.
when it comes to debris. Pound Ridge is holding on that.
Pound Ridge is holding up, but my feeling chatting to them is that they're
You
going.
would know better because you're on with the day.
Now, this is a personal conversation, not a formal resolution by the town.
I think we're all looking to see it in writing from people.
Well, I would think, let's make sure we cross our Ts and dot our Is, but this is something we should not,
We don't want
not
to
do.
incur the expense until it's essentially approved. I mean, that's the genesis of what we're talking about. So,
Well, we don't want to, we want to make sure that we afford our residents the opportunity to get this done.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, my feeling is that this is,
So we want to put this out on the website, put it in the news, that people are supposed to put themselves in line for the cleanup?
yeah, but I don't want to do that until we're certain we're going to do it.
Well, Peter said we're doing it anyway. Aren't we doing it
I
now?
mean, we're doing our share every day, but
so-
we can't do the whole town, but we're constantly keeping up with whatever we can with our 6 guys.
So I think,
Okay.
yeah, I think we need to put this out there, and
We'll catch up on the other end.
now the question is, were you looking at going out for a bid, or?
Well, here was my question, Peter. We go out every year for bid, and I had 4 people that bid it this year. The contractor that was afforded it can't do it. 2 of them are available. Then we would need about 4. Now, whether FEMA requires to go out to an additional bid,
I suspect so.
if so, that'll hold up the cog in the wheel.
Yes.
But I need that from FEMA saying yes.
What's the size, what are the size of the bids?
I'm sorry?
What are the size of the bids approximately?
Right now, the ones that we have, it's like $1,600 a day for a chipping crew,
Okay.
which run you about $8,000 a week,
Yeah.
which run, if you had 4 crews, about $32,000. Whether you can get it done in 4 weeks we don't know. A lot of big stump removals, which it takes an excavator, we can do that with another contractor that's bid that out. But we have to be careful before it's us.
Any other comments on this? John?
Should.
no.
Just
Be very careful with that.
There's a couple things in the federal acquisition regulations that may be somewhat applicable, and we should probably get it pre-approved. Hector Gonzalez should probably bless off on what we're doing in terms
Yeah.
of the contract. I would like him to say,
He wants to know exactly what he's likely to be, at least the categories
right,
that he's going to be involved in this town.
right, because they're gonna pay you only what's on the rate card, so.
Yes, sir?
Yeah, just as a resident here, where does the debris have to be picked up? Delivered to the middle of the street?
Well,
Edge of the road.
if we go ahead with roughly what I've written here, it must be piled at the side of the road without obstructing traffic in any way. It must be piled with the thick ends towards the road. The butts of the branches must be towards the road. There must be no, this is not a license to put leaves or grass clippings out. It is strictly a way of us collecting brush and logs, which must not be, and the logs must not be greater than 3 foot in length.
What do you do with logs up there? You have to cut it up and put it in
Yes.
the street?
Yes.
So essentially, we have to remove it.
Yes, this is not an invitation. The town is not going to move into your property or anybody else's and take this stuff out. This is, if you care to put stuff at the side of the road, which is related to this storm, we will collect it and take it away.
You haven't got the approval of FEMA on that yet, though, Peter. I mean, we're not saying that you're going to start that program right now. I mean, we're doing what we can on the road,
Yes.
but if everybody puts it out and we don't go forth with that program, you're going to have a lot of stuff alongside the road until that's approved by Tuesday, I would think.
Yes.
Please, I just want to make sure.
But the announcement which FEMA put out is very clear, that if we do it at all,
Yes.
it does apply to all storm-related debris.
By the way, you can see this already
On town
down
road.
county, down where I work in Harrison, you go along.
You're all lined up.
The stuff's all out, lined up.
You see it in
neatly
New Canaan.
along the
You
road.
drive
Canaan
down
also.
123, you see it already all stacked up in New
So
Canaan.
these
They have their own disposal and
places
everything.
evidently are pretty confident that this is
But
going forward.
I'm not clear. Are we going to disseminate this notification and tell our townspeople to put it out Sunday, the 25th, for purposes of pickup on the 26th?
I think we should probably delay this by at least a week.
How does Peter Rippinger feel about that?
Pete,
I think we should delay this by a week versus the dates I've got in here, which were that all debris must be at the edge of the property by Sunday, November the 25th, and pickup will belong on the 26th.
So my concern
Will
is, as
begin on the
Frank put it,
26th. What?
until we see the Ts and the Is dotted, I don't want to get the people a false security and then we're caught in something.
And
So we wanna
granted
do
that
it.
the Ts and the Is are not going to be crossed until the 27th,
Okay, then I don't think.
then
we
I
should.
don't think we should begin this on the
Unless the board
26th.
feels
I think we
different,
should
right?
begin it a week from the
I
26th.
say FEMA
To the
before
extent that
sometimes,
there's some
not
level of
quick, and I
approval.
don't want-
yeah, and there's
Yes.
only a certain amount of contractors too. So you
There's
gotta
only a certain
remember,
amount.
you know what I
Yes.
mean?
Don't
We're
have
gonna
a lot
have
around the roll.
to get locked and loaded for
I-
those contractors to come in
I tried
into
for
our
big one
town
like
and do it.
Davis or one of the big ones, but they're all busy. Yeah. So they're hard to get.
Okay, so move it off to Rebecca, wait for the dates.
Okay, I'm going to move this off a
Yeah.
week, and, but this is basically the form which I planned to go forward. Next item. The Lewisboro Library's renovation project. Renee, would you like to step forward with Donald?
I'm Renee Peirce, and this is Donald McDonald. We're the architects for the library expansion and renovation. We've been to the planning board, and they asked that we come and coordinate with you because there are certain activities involved in the construction process that will have to occur on town property. So this drawing gives you an indication of what we have to do. First off is starting the construction on the actual additions, these 3 additions. And so we're asking that we have use of these 5 parking spaces in the back, which is back over here. These 4 spaces on the side of the driveway over there. And then a portion of this area here on the corner. Some of this is library property, but we're just asking that we might have to bleed over onto town property occasionally. These spots would be used during the day by the contractors, sometimes for deliveries or trucks, that sort of thing. Mostly during the day that would happen, and then at night they would be available to people coming to meetings and stuff. Not necessarily all the time. There might be something there for, a limited time, but over the course of the construction project, most of the time they would be available at night. The second part involves the installation of some infiltration tanks for the stormwater. It's going to handle the stormwater from the new additions, and that has to be installed. It will be on town property, but the way things are now, the driveway here is actually on library property, so that has to be torn up for the tanks to go in.
Renee misspoke.
Yeah.
It's going to be on the tanks are going to be on library property.
Right.
But the access drive back there goes on library property as well as town property. So to put the tanks in, we have to disturb that access drive.
So what we're proposing is that we close off, barrels here and barrels there. We close off the access while these tanks are being installed. And we're saying a couple of weeks. Couple of weeks, probably.
Couple of weeks. Pete, how does that impact your operations? You see this? They're going to close off?
Over that way won't hurt at all.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Frank. In fact, it'd be a good thing.
Good, all right.
And we've discussed it with the Millie Huffmeyer, who owns the post office, and the postmaster over there. And they have no problem with it. We just are leaving this area, what's now some parking area, for people to turn around, so people would come in, turn around, go back out. It's for a short period, at 2 weeks at the most. And am I forgetting something?
These spots would always be available in the evenings.
Yeah.
They're just for contractor parking. These spots, I think it's likely that for the brunt of the construction, since the construction is so close to the parking area, you're really going to need these spots for dump trucks, contractor vehicles. There might be some material storage. So I have a feeling that until the end, they probably wouldn't be available
The end of
in
the
the
2
evenings.
weeks.
I'm sorry, what?
The end of the project or the end of the 2 weeks?
Oh, no, the 2 weeks is only to do with the installation of these barrels. We've given you on the drawings time for each of the two basic tasks, time for building renovating and adding on to the library, and installing the things on the access drive. In the terms of the access drive, we're talking weeks. In terms of the building, we're in the preliminary stage of planning it. So we're using, it could be a year, this whole project. It could be 6 months, it could be a year. At this point, it's somewhere in between there. So for now, we're saying a year with this area and with this area, and using this for material storage. We'll have a better handle on that probably in 3 or 4 months.
Personally, I think, well, I've been through this with you before, obviously, and I think you've drawn up a plan to minimize the disruption, particularly when you bear in mind that the library will probably be closed for a significant part of this, which means that the demand for parking will be reduced.
One thing I'd like to say real quick is that we've got a public hearing scheduled for
Yeah, I
10
know.
minutes ago. So do you need a motion on this? Is that what they need?
Yes.
I make a motion to authorize the library to park cars as described in the proposed renovation and expansion document that's been submitted to the planning board and to the town board for consideration in an effort to be able to complete the proposed construction on the library.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
In that case, I would like to move forward to a public hearing on the proposed amendments to Chapter 189 of the Town Code of the Town of Lewisboro regarding stormwater management and erosion and sediment control to conform with current New York State law.
Good evening.
Good evening, Joe.
Good. Joe Tremelli, Keller Sessions Consulting. And just wanted to run through the proposed amendment to the local law, Chapter 189. That ordinance was originally adopted in 2007 for compliance with, at the time, the Speedy's general permit for stormwater runoff construction activities. That state permit has since changed or been revised twice since our ordinance had been adopted. So we're proposing these changes to the code to be more in compliance with the current permit. With that said, we've been reviewing projects for the town following the current state guidelines. This is just kind of to clean things up and have everybody on the same page. The revisions to the code, for the most part, there were some changes to the definitions, again, just to keep more in line with the state's definitions. They're really taken word for word from the current permit. Right. I guess the largest change, the current threshold for SWIPs, stormwater pollution prevention plans, is an acre of disturbance. The new permit, anything in the watershed, 5,000 square feet to an acre, is required to complete what's called, or prepare what's called a basic SWIP, which is erosion and sediment controls, and file a notice of intent with the state. So those requirements have been added to the proposed law. In addition to that, for the any projects.
Is that, I'm sorry, is that out of the state statute?
That's out of the Speedy's permit, yes. The projects requiring a full SWIP, which requires post-construction stormwater management controls. In the new version of the permit, there are requirements for enhanced phosphorus for projects within the watershed. That's now referenced in the new code. And projects, whether you're inside or out of the watershed, there are green infrastructure practices that are to be implemented in the design. That's also now included in the proposed amendment to the law.
Wasn't the key on this one, we wanted to make sure we didn't unintentionally incur a full SWIP where it doesn't belong. So we made sure that that was the case.
Right, the enhanced phosphorus and the green infrastructure practices are only requirements for full SWIPs.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you get into the acre and above.
That's fine, but I just want to make sure we didn't get a full SWIP for the under the acre.
No, the under the 5,000 square feet to an acre is just a basic SWIP. It's the erosion and sediment
there's one or
controls.
two towns that had a problem when they adopted it, and they ended up triggering that when it wasn't supposed to be triggered. So I just wanted to make sure that's what I asked, that our legislation was reviewed, so we don't have that issue. So that's fine.
That lower threshold does require filing an NOI with the state.
Yeah,
but that's
fine.
Right. And finally, we have we've updated the inspection and monitoring requirements for again, in line with the new permit. They've actually been lessened a little bit. In the current code and under the old permit, there were, it was inspections once per week, in addition to an inspection within 24 hours of a storm event. They've lessened that to one inspection every 7 calendar days. So that's also reflected in the code. In order to, I guess, ease, well, more importantly, to provide stormwater quality town-wide and to provide the ease of the administrative end of things, Stormwater Committee recommended that the 5,000 square foot threshold be applied town-wide. So whether you're in or out of the watershed, there would be a local town stormwater permit. And then if you happen to have a project in the watershed and above the 5,000 square foot threshold, you would also need to comply with the state speedies, which you do today, which would require the filing of the notice of intent. So there is an added layer with the town-wide stormwater permit. Currently, any project that comes before the planning board, we're reviewing the stormwater management as part of that site plan application. So a large majority of the projects are being reviewed that way anyway. I think the added layer, or the permit, and the review for projects that would basically affect property outside of the watershed would be a small percentage, because any significant project in those areas is going to be reviewed by the planning board anyway. But this was just, again, to try and make it uniform town-wide. I think that's the basic summary of the changes. There would need to be, if the town were to adopt this, the stormwater permit would need to be created, because right now we've been using the state's notice of intent as the effective stormwater permit. Obviously, if you have a project that doesn't require that filing, that permit doesn't exist. So something would need to be created for the stormwater permit, and there would be some kind of fee schedule would need to be adopted for the review and implementation of those permits.
Stormwater management officer, is that already designated building inspector, or?
Right now, the building inspector is a designated stormwater management officer, and the town's consulting engineer. Right now, it's at either of their discretion on the smaller projects for stormwater management.
Okay, he is identified already.
Yes.
Just so the board's aware, in addition, well, what's different than what you have before you is we discussed making one additional change on 189-7G with regard to extensions. It previously read that there would be an extension that could be granted. We changed that to just simply read extensions may be granted within the discretion of the town, essentially to make that a little more open-ended depending on a case-by-case basis and depending on what the state requirements may be in the future. So that's different than what you have in front of you, and that's what we would recommend to change that wording to. It would be the beginning of the second sentence. It would just say extensions may be granted.
Does anybody else here wish to comment, or do you have any questions to ask of Joe? Anybody on the board wish to speak?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any discussion on this?
No, I think it looks like we've done the sort of minimum essential to bring ourselves back in line, and haven't introduced any materially significant new burdens per se, so I think it's just
Rationale for exceeding the state requirements?
a good move.
I think we're not exceeding the state
Yeah, we did.
requirement.
You just said so. What's the rationale for the exceeding the state requirements, the 5,000 square foot filing?
The 5,000 square feet of the state permit is a threshold within the watershed, properties within the watershed.
Right.
Stormwater.
We're extending that outside
We're
of the
extending it
watershed.
outside of the watershed.
And
The
the
idea
reason is
being
why?
just enhanced water quality townwide, and ease of
Uniform
implementation,
application.
and just uniformity throughout the town.
What percent of the town is in the watershed? I thought it's pretty high, right?
Yeah, you're probably
70 or 80.
75%, somewhere around there.
Right. So we're just saying, we're gonna use one set of codes for the whole town.
Right.
Otherwise, you're gonna.
It does complicate the issue if you have one set of codes for Vista and one
And-
set of codes for the rest of the
There was
town.
also the potential rationale that the other portion of the town is in Connecticut watershed.
Yeah.
So it kind of, the requirements there might end up falling on us at a later date. So it is something that, from the Stormwater Committee's suggestion, it makes sense.
It's presumably a matter of time before Connecticut asks us to do the same thing as New
Other
York.
towns, I think, do the same thing.
This is very similar to the neighboring communities, Yorktown, Somers, I believe North Salem. They all have very similar thresholds and applications. Their percentages in the watershed are higher. Yorktown and Somers are probably 90%. I think Somers is entirely in the watershed. But that same thinking, apply it townwide, at least for the basic slips, and keep that stormwater control requirement townwide.
Okay. That's my only question.
Any other questions from the board?
We had also prepared a negative declaration.
Yes.
Yeah. It's been here.
So the adoption would be two separate motions, one for the neg deck, then one for
I'd like to make a motion to adopt. What? Neg deck first? Okay, sorry. I'd like to make a motion to accept, to accept the negative declaration for the State Environmental Quality Review Notice of Determination of Non-Significance. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion to enact as an ordinance the revised Chapter 189 enclosed in this in the agenda.
As amended to include the one change we discussed.
Oh,
187.
including the changes as amended to include the changes made by the, or recommended by the attorneys. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Nice
I'd like
holiday.
to move on. Oh, sorry, were you?
No.
Did I cut you off? I'd like to move on to discuss, to open a public hearing on the 2% cap and a law to override the tax levy limit established in the general municipal law. Does anybody wish to speak?
I mean, I
Yes.
have some comments on it.
Well, now's the time, sir.
Now is the time.
You feel free to come forward if you wish. And we'd like to know
Who I am?
who you are.
Yeah,
and,
okay.
Where you live.
Bill Frank.
Bill Frank?
Bill Frank,
Okay.
and 35 years here. And I'd just like to say that I think this is, 35 years, the most outrageous budget I've ever seen, considering the economic times that we're in here. I don't see any rationale for 18%. And I don't know if I haven't had an opportunity to look at the budget, but I would certainly think that with a little effort on the part of everybody here, that you could limit that to 2%. And we pay the highest taxes in the country. We get very little for it. We have no trash, we have no water, no sewer. And I don't know what the rationale is for an 18% increase at this point. I think it's going to do some damage to real estate up here. It's going to hurt real estate values. It's going to, I mean, who would want to move into a town that's just about to raise their taxes 18%? And there are an awful lot of homes for sale in this town. And I think it's just the wrong time to even consider something like this. I'd like to hear your comments on that.
You do know it's 18, or the proposal anyway, is 18 on the town part of the taxes, not the...
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make
I know that.
clear.
It's in fact at the moment 16.
16?
Yes, which in your, judged by what you said, I suspect you feel is very little better.
No, it really isn't. I mean, that's a lot, huge increase, and the 2% was, cap was placed on the town by a Democratic governor. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that we pay outrageous taxes in here to begin with before you want to do something like this on top of it. I just think it's very ill-considered, and I think the timing couldn't be worse with this economy.
Your comments are very well taken, and I think the board appreciates them. Do you understand that this proposed local law is for nothing more than giving us the discretion to exceed the 2% cap, not in terms of a commitment to exceed it? So would you like to be heard specific as to that?
Well, I think it ought to be put up for a town vote. I think that everybody out there should vote on this budget, just like they do on the school board budget. And maybe you'd want to put it up there with, as a proposal to abide by it or not abide by it, which might force you to abide by it. I mean, where do you think the town would vote right now if you put this out there tomorrow?
I don't know, sir, but I do know that in practice, because of the existing commitments of the town to both debt and via employee agreements, you are unlikely to come away without a significant breach of the 2% cap.
What are I haven't had a chance to go over this budget, I was just handed it tonight. I mean, what are the commitments that we have to the employees? Are most of them pension benefit related? And if they are, you know, why can't we ask the employees to pay their fair share of their benefits, like everybody else in the country does? And why can't we convert them to a 401k? That might have a huge positive impact on the taxpayers of this town.
You would have to get the union's agreement to that.
Do we have to hire union labor?
Once
Can we
you
put them on
have, you have
part-time
to.
so they wouldn't be full-time employees? Have
could
you considered any of this? Apparently not.
I think we have.
We've actually been at this process for about 3 years of cutting, and we've cut about $1.5 million worth of.
Well, it seems
worth
like you
of
didn't
stuff.
do
So
enough.
it's not that we haven't been at the process, but in terms of the things you're suggesting are not within our power to do at this moment. At least.
Have you made any plans to do them in the future? I mean, you just throw up your hands and say, we'll let the union run the town?
I mean, I personally would not be in favor of some sort of, you know, Wisconsin, let's lock the doors on the employees. Because in actual fact, our employees probably have one of the lowest salary levels in the county.
But has there been any attempt to change the benefits packages to make them put more in?
Yes, there have been changes to the tiers, so that
to make it into a 401k.
A 401k is not legal in New York State for town employees.
Well,
yeah.
Is there something similar that might be appropriate?
Yeah. One thing, I think your comments are valid. One of the things, just we could address a lot of the things you're discussing. There'll be a public hearing regarding the budget. The budget was prepared by the supervisor, and the entire board just really got their hands on it last week to start working on it. So a lot of these things you're talking about, you know, hopefully within the deliberations of the board, now that we have the budget, we're going to start looking at it and seeing what can be done. I mean, I've been on the board for a number of years now, and we did work on a lot of those things in the last couple of budgets. We worked very hard. We've limited part-time. We've done different things. Our employees, at this point, almost all of the employees, if not all of them, are paying into their benefits. But there is room. I definitely feel there's room to cut in this budget, and hopefully we're able to get it down to where we want to get it down. I think one of the things that Councilman Papalardo was alluding to is there is a statutory period of time where you need to have this hearing regarding breaking the cap, where if you are in a position where you have to break the cap because there are some union agreements and things like that, or factors that are in the budget that might actually even do through the hardest earnest of trying to cut and scale back where we possibly might have to go over that 2%. We need to have this on the books. I don't know if we necessarily have to vote on the hearing tonight. We could possibly even not vote on it, but we need to actually have the public hearing where
the issue is if the arithmetic,
residents such as yourself can come up and speak.
If the arithmetic doesn't work out, we get a penalty. So, you know, the budget work is going to be done. I'm in favor of a 0% increase, other than for discretionary, other than statutory or collective bargaining obligations. But if the arithmetic doesn't work out and we go over 2% based on sheer arithmetic, we get penalized if we don't have this law in the books. That's what this hearing is about, not the eaches and everys of the budget. What are the penalties?
it's more of a process that the town have to go through. I think there are some penalties
I
involved.
think the
Basically,
comptroller
the
takes
state
over our finances, that's what happens.
Yes.
What happens is, how the process works is that.
And we pay a lot more for
if
our bonds.
If the budget proposed seems like it may exceed the tax cap, the town board would have a duty to enact the tax cap legislation to override the 2% tax limit. Reason being, well, first of all, that local law would allow the board to exceed the tax cap. It would not require the board to exceed the tax cap. If this law were to be passed, the town board can certainly make all the cuts it can and possibly not exceed the tax cap or exceed it by 1% or 2% or what have you. But without this law, if the board was unable to adopt a budget that did not exceed the tax cap, then basically all the funds that exceed that 2% limit go to some facility to be held by the state, and the state's got to basically oversee how those funds
And that's
are
for a number of
handled.
years into the future. We're in a lot of financial and economic trouble, and our rating is much diminished.
Right. And the budget wouldn't work.
So that's the nature of the penalty.
I think if anybody wants to speak, we have to keep this under control. You can come up to the mic and you can be heard. Just come up to the mic, we'll take you one at a time. I saw a few hands up.
Richard.
You could start a little line there, and you could do that. I mean, one of the things I think you have to keep in mind with this tax cap, which is very difficult for the towns and for the counties and anywhere else, is that it came with still all the unfunded mandates. The state liked to put that cap on us, and still there's no help that's being provided towards any of these mandates. I mean, at the town level, at the county level, at any level. So it's a very frustrating fact. Once again, I agree with Councilman Kelly. I'd like to see if we can get down under that 2% to zero. But the reality of the matter is it would also be,
Solely for discretion.
Yeah,
There are
exactly.
obligations we have to incur.
But it would-
Don't anybody write that, 0% budget is a
Exactly.
position, because that's not true.
But it
Math
would-
is math, and 2 and 2 always equals 4, so we have those obligations.
And my
under
point
collective
would be,
bargaining
it would
agreements.
not be acting in the fiduciary responsibility that all the councilmen have to act to not consider this legislation because of the penalties that would be imposed if we went in the other direction. But I'll leave the floor to the public.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Richard Sclaren, 80 Park Road, Golden's Bridge. Just wanted to talk about a few things and put this in context a little bit as I see it. Number one, I've spoke about this before, that there's a structural problem and the town has to look for ways to have revenue on a long-term basis. What that means is limited, targeted development in this town for purposes of raising revenue on a long-term basis. There's no other way to look at it. And I've been here to speak about this before, and I use the example that for myself and my family, if I want to spend discretionary income on things, I have to leave the town to do so. Except for a very limited extent, talking about restaurants, talking about entertainment, talking about other activities, I have to leave the town, and the bottom line is our town can't capture the overwhelming majority of those revenues. So that's something that has to be addressed, and the town's resistance to looking at development opportunities has to be realistic in light of where we are economically. So that's the first point. The second point, and this goes to what the gentleman was talking about, we have to look at this in its proper context and in fairness to everybody on the board. The town board's budget is, give or take, $10 million, wherever it is now, $10 million, and it's been that way basically for about a decade. And if you look at the budget, if I'm understanding it, and I'm not an accountant, but I think we're raising about $2.5 million, 2.6 in taxes. If you divide that for our, 14,000 revenue, you're talking a couple $100 a person. And you contrast that with our school district, and everybody should understand this, and I was at a seminar recently where we looked at some numbers. Everybody should be aware, this is just a fact, that over $32,000 per pupil is spent in this town to educate our students. In case anybody wants to know where that comes in, it's number one in Westchester County. More than Scarsdale, more than Bronxville, more than anywhere else. Number one. So we're spending $32,000. So that ties into a budget which is well in excess of $100 million versus $10 million for what the town spends. And you could take a look at it. People talk about the budget and how important it is to educate our students. I have 2 high school kids myself. It's tremendously important, but everybody should also understand the amount of administrative positions in the school that we have, which are over $100,000. You have dozens and dozens of administrative, non-teaching positions in the town, in the school district, which are paying that kind of money. So that's something that people should focus their attention on if you want to look at where the money is and where it's being spent. As opposed to the town board and town employees where nobody makes that kind of money. Nobody at all. Except for one. But be that as it may. So everybody should take a look at a proper context.
No, that's
nobody here.
was worried.
Okay. Yes. And everybody should also understand that even the proposed increases, as I'm getting it, is nothing more than a cost of living 1 or 2% that everybody's proposing. And that's not where the money is. You're talking about, for the decade that I've been watching this in town, that you're basically trying to put things together with Scotch tape and spit to try and keep things running. And one of the things that ties into my third point, which I think we have to take a look at as far as the budget is concerned, you got to take a look at where the money is. And I'm talking about health care benefits to the employees. My personal view is here, there should be and people should be aware, if you have a certain amount of service, there's lifetime health care benefits and people don't know about that, that's something that can be explained. My view on this is that people who have been in the system and have accrued that, it should be an ironclad moral obligation that the town has to those people. Okay, that's something that people who've worked for the worked for the town for many years have that expectation. And up here, part of the benefit that's been traditionally is that you're getting paid lower on the way of salary, and you've been having a situation where your benefits have been good. So that's been the offset. People who are going to be employed in this town in the future, starting, from my perspective, January 1, 2013, should not be eligible for any lifetime employment. Anybody who comes into the system here forward, that should be lifetime benefits. I'm sorry. Thank you, Frank.
Or lifetime employment.
Right, well, yeah. Wishful thinking. That should be eliminated. And then on a going forward basis, we should take a look at where the people are in that middle and the best way to adjust that in light of where we are. I've tried to give a little context here about where everything is here, and the real issue and the focus is whether we should exceed the 2% cap. I guess certainly for this year, in light of the economic situation that we're in, I'm willing to pay for my extra cup of coffee each week for the next year, so to get us through this. And hopefully, we can only hope that the economy will improve over time, but we got to address these long-term structural issues, or else we're going to be back here in the same issue, trying to save $10 here, $500 here, and it's really nothing in light of what the expenditures are in the town versus what they are in our school district. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Who's next?
There's some people.
I know. There was a lady. Oh, there you are. Come on.
I just have one brief
Well, you can come on up.
Yes.
Your hip's fine now. No, she had an operation. Sorry, I wasn't joking. But you're doing well.
One brief question.
Yeah.
My name is Evelyn Kahlo, and my question has to do with the budget. Is it currently online so that anyone who would like to view it can look online and see the budget?
It is, but we should put a link on the homepage. It's buried in the finance section.
Right, because I
Usually at
looked
this
for
time
it
of
and
year,
I
we
didn't.
put a big blurb on the
I didn't
homepage.
see it right away, so that the residents understand what the issues are with the budget and they understand what the town board has to approve or disapprove.
And I
to
would
keep.
add some of the other explanatory documents that you've
Yes.
issued,
Right.
given where the increases are and things like that, would be helpful as
Because
well.
if I remember from other town board meetings, there was a real issue of transparency and having the voters understand what the town board was voting for, and that it be made very clear and succinct so that they could, if they had the ability to analyze a budget, could see what was being charged and being paid for.
So that was my only comment.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Keith Martin, Elmwood Road. I have a question that came up last year, and I don't recall the answer or if we ever got an answer, but that is, if this ordinance is put in place, is it a permanent ordinance, or is it relative to this year only?
1 year.
1 year only.
Okay,
1 year only.
That's good, because I would be very opposed to it if it was permanent. So each year, you have to revisit it, have a public hearing.
Yep.
Right.
Yes.
And hear us stand up and tell you not to do it, right?
Yep.
Okay. I think it's okay. I also think it should be done at the last minute. In other words, we're a ways out from having to face this decision. I think you all believe you have to face it. I'm not sure we do, and I think we have lots of discussion to have about the budget before we get there. So the ordinance shouldn't be passed until we know we have to pass it, whatever the timing of that is, et cetera, et cetera.
There's no time.
Yeah, we're really tied up against it right now. When do we have to do it, Bob?
Well, your budget has to be adopted by December
December
20th.
10th, oh.
And you have to have this law filed with the Secretary of State before your adoption of the
Yeah.
budget.
And you have to, so we have to actually vote on this? At what point?
I would suggest
That
the
would be
board
good.
vote on it as early as possible to make sure it's filed properly with the Secretary of State so it's enacted when you act on the budget.
The law has to be enacted shortly. It's got to be enacted before the accepted budget.
But that's December 20th.
Correct, but there are legal process to get your law on the books so you can actually act in accordance with the law before you can act both the same night and it's not really until
So
it's filed with the state.
because last year was a lot of conversation about that, and I thought that, my recall was that you thought you could do it
You're 100% right.
at the same time.
I think that was the
These
discussion.
could go in at the same time.
The Comptroller's
We're also
Office,
having it
when
on
it
October.
initially issued their sheets on this, had said you can do them both the same night as long as you do one before the other.
And that's what
I
I thought I
disagree with
heard.
that, and most municipal attorneys disagree with that, because your law has to be filed with the Secretary of
Right.
State to be enacted,
You can't
and to
file.
be acted and be able to act in accordance with it. If you pass it that night, it's not really a law yet, so you're acting in accordance with something that wasn't actually a law.
Your memory is accurate.
Yeah, I remember
It's just
that
We're
same-
getting different counsel now.
Okay. Well, I still would say we should do it at the last minute and hopefully after there's some discussion about the budget. We're sitting here talking about a law to override the state cap, which is only in its second year, with a budget that's proposed that at least a good portion of the board doesn't agree with, and a good portion of the population doesn't agree with, and we're deciding to pass a law to allow that budget or a higher budget than the cap to go through. That seems, I won't say
Those
backwards to
are,
me.
those are comments very well taken. However, at least from my perspective, don't misconstrue a vote tonight or within the immediate future.
I don't misconstrue it. I'm just saying I think that the order of that process is backwards. Now, I understand why, and I'm not in favor of overriding 2% cap, but I think I'm in favor of passing the law because it sounds like we have to.
It's a safety
But that makes no sense to me that that's the way that we have to proceed on this. Without hearing the public talk about the budget, and without seeing the budget and working the budget, we're passing a law to exceed the state cap, which is in its second year. Makes no sense to me.
Not
That's the way it has to be
mandatorily to
done.
exceed it, but just to give the board the discretion to do it.
No, I understand.
And it's a timing.
But it
piece.
sets up something, there's a presumption, I think, when you do that, okay, we got this, now we can go do this, rather than let's work hard through this to come up to the point where we decide we have to do it. And that doesn't make sense. I understand it, but I'm just telling you, to me, it doesn't make sense. And I think to do this without the public conversation, to have this process, then maybe you should have had the budget done sooner, presented to the public sooner, and had public conversation on the budget in time so that we could have this meeting tonight and all those conversations would have been had and our decision would be more informed and we could speak more intelligently about it.
With due respect, sir, we have been discussing the budget since sometime in September.
I've seen it,
Yeah.
and I've read it in the paper, and I've seen it online.
Mm.
But we haven't had a public hearing on the budget. We haven't
No,
had
because the
we haven't
public
had a
hearing-
board work through a final budget.
There
So-
can't be a public hearing. Well, I guess there could be, but in practice, there won't be a public hearing for another 2 weeks, I don't think.
That's my point.
Well,
We're
yes.
having a public hearing on passing
That
a
is
law
near the
to
end of the
override
process.
the state cap on the budget without having the public hearing and all the information on the budget. That's backwards to me.
Okay.
Well, there's nothing stopping us from having a public hearing at any point in time, I suppose, if it was deemed to be the thing to do.
And one of the things we used to do, and I think I agree with you, and I know it was a little arduous, but we used to go line by line earlier on in the cycle. I mean, the Supervisor Parsons had the budget, had the different department heads come in over the prior to the storm, we were having meetings and department heads coming in, but we didn't actually have the budget. In the past, we would have the budget and be going line by line, and at that point, the public's there, and there would be public comment taken at the beginning of the meeting, and they knew we were going to be discussing the Parks and Rec budget that night or whatever. But we did also have an abridged version of that this year and in the past. So I understand what you're saying.
I think one of the strange things is, I mean, the purpose of the law is to make this whole thing a serious business. You're going to exceed the cap, then you need to stand up in front of the public and declare yourself, and the most serious thing we can do is to enact a law. So that's the form of this thing. But that being the case, enacting a law requires this process. So it can't really happen. If it could happen on the same day that we pass the budget, well, then it doesn't have the same impact in terms of forcing us to stand in front of the public and declare this, in a sense. So it's a weird process, no doubt, but I don't know that we can make it any better.
Well, I would suggest that you perhaps talk to other towns and go back to the state and tell them this. This is not the right way to do it. And I actually like the recommendation of the gentleman over here that we change, and I know this is a state, but we change the budget process to a voted process, so that we vote on the budget just like we vote on a school budget. And I think that if you
But do you remember
believe in that and represent that, you can get with other towns and go to the state.
Let me just toss that to you. You get to vote on the school budget. Do you see what the school budget has? What's happened to the school budget? Because if you vote that down, they still have the contingency budget that fails. The object of having...
Wrong way to do it.
But the object of having a...
Put a 2% cap in, vote on it, and if it's voted down, whatever number of times, 2% is your new budget.
Yeah, but they can still vote to override that, though.
That's a real 2% cap.
Yeah, I'm not in disagreeing with you. This is not. I'm not in disagreeing with you. The 2% tax cap, the way it's presented, the way it is, it definitely has its flaws, without a doubt.
Hi, Tricia Freeman. I would like to understand a few things. The first is, you all say this is a one-year enactment of exceeding the cap. But so for example, say the amount is $100 to somebody. Is that $100 now out of the budget next year, or can you then do 2% on that and then 2% and 2%? You're saying it's only for 1 year, but that one increase is a permanent increase, correct? So then it's 2% on top of that 18%.
Yes.
So does everyone understand that? I just want to make sure everyone understands that. So I would
It
say
is in the base.
don't be fooled by the 1%. As you can tell, I'm not in favor of this. I find that this is honestly unconscionable in this economic period that we're in. I'd like to hear from you all what other cuts you've considered. I don't understand why you're just going to this, exceed the 2% cap. I mean, I think everyone in this country is trying to hopefully start to live within their means, and I'd like to understand why you are feeling you can't live within your means and your 2%, and what hard decisions can you make. I did speak to Mr. Parsons last night. What can you cut? I mean, you talked about Parks and Rec, you talked about the police. I don't think anyone here is in favor of losing the police, but it just seems like we're not hearing what else can be done to, I definitely appreciate the gentleman saying raise revenues, but if we can't raise revenues, then I think we have to cut expenses. And I don't understand why I'm seeing salary increases in here for people. I understand the business about the union, the benefits. I don't agree with it. I don't understand a lot about this, but I don't understand why why when everyone else in America is paying more for their health insurance and everyone else in America is lucky to have a job, I think, that we're giving people raises and we're not asking them to contribute for their medical benefits and the way.
But they do contribute in the town. I want to just, I agree with a lot you're saying, but they do contribute for the benefits in the town. You cannot say our town employees do not contribute, because they do. We made that change a number of years ago, and our town employees do contribute at different scales.
What percentage do they contribute?
It varies between 10 to 20%.
But that, I mean, in terms of what the public is paying for their own benefits, that's nothing. I'd like to hear what tough decisions you have looked at making and have discarded in favor of just raising our taxes by 16% now, you're saying.
That would be a discussion for the hearing on the budget. We have not been able to do that yet. The councilmen have not, this is the supervisor's proposed budget. The councilmen have not done anything at this point on the budget. We all have our suggestions of what we want to do and where we'd like to see it. But at this point in time, once again, the 2%, this is just a fiduciary responsibility that, because we've discussed this with council, that if we were in a position where we had to exceed the 2% tax cap, we had to have this hearing on the books by this date, or we would have a problem.
So are you telling me you're all going to do this anyway, no matter how many of us get up here and stand and say,
We're telling
we
you that
disagree
your
with it?
criticism at this point is not for this public comment period.
No, but I'm
What we're doing is
asking-
about the 2%, whether or not we can pass a law to bust the cap, which is not a license to bust the cap, it's simply permission to do it. It's not for defending the budget, because the only person who created a budget so far is the supervisor. So nobody else has had a whack at it. So we've all looked at it, and we all want to know what the math is going to be, I think, which engenders why we need to do this. But if you're telling, I'm not telling you that the final budget is 3%, 3.5%, 2 3/4%. Could be all of those things when we get to whack it up a little bit.
But there is a lot of, we did go through a lot of useful information, I think, which you probably haven't had access to it. I think we should post it, and that tells us, out in this budget, what are the major contributors to the increase, whether it's, X dollars from the health insurance premiums that went up, and X dollars from the contract mandated union. So you can see where the breakout is. That the increases are coming up. And then we can have, during the hearing, we can have a useful discussion. Right now, if you ask us, to sort of jump into that, we can't itemize the list of the tough decisions we made because we're not there yet.
But I would think you'd understand how it's hard for everyone here to be, you're putting us in the same position of saying, hearing us disagree with, or, disagree with a 2% increase when we don't really have the information either.
We're in the same position.
No, but what I'm hearing is, when I hear this is a fiduciary duty of you all, then if it were me and I've been on a board with a fiduciary duty, you're just going to do this because you're saying it's your fiduciary duty. Am I misunderstanding that? Whether or not if it's your fiduciary duty because
to limit the harm.
To limit the harm, then, so it doesn't matter how many of us get up here, right? You guys are going to do it because it's your fiduciary duty.
Well, no,
am I wrong?
From my understanding, I'll speak for myself, and understanding the tax cap legislation and what council has advised us and what he advised the audience this evening, is if we were put in a position, the board, after we make as many hard choices or whatever the choices that the board comes down to, and we still have to exceed the tax cap, but we have not passed and enacted this legislation, the town, all of us, all residents of town, can be put in harm's way. That's something I don't want to see happen. So if that's the case, that would make me vote to be able to enable this legislation to exceed the cap. Do I want to exceed the cap? I'll personally say no, I do not. I'm going to try every which way we can without gutting the town and gutting the services that we need to provide you. After, as you just saw what happened with the storm and all, we have to make sure we have a highway department to clear the roads and clear the snow. We do have to make sure we have, I'm a firm believer of the police department. I'm a firm believer of the work that we do. We need to have a building inspector. We need to have these things. Otherwise, we don't have a town. Shut up the door and close shop. But I do believe there are structural things that we can do, and we have to look at, as we did last year and the year before, we have to look at being able to go into the future and how we're going to be able to operate this town. And I am a firm believer of paying for your benefits. I pay for my benefits now at the county also. I am a member of the Teamsters Union, and that union did go down the road it should do, and now all Teamsters are paying for their benefits. CSEA hasn't done that yet. And that's why the county's going to have a ton of layoffs. They have to start realizing, CSEA, that's one of the biggest unions in the county. That's not a town union, I digress, I'm sorry. But the town unions all have gone to the point where they are paying for their benefits. And you know what? There has to be slowly but surely structural changes that we need to enact in the town. So I don't think 17% is a legitimate number right now. I think it's outrageous. I think it's ludicrous. I was quoted in the paper. I think there are other things we could do. I think putting almost $300,000 towards highway improvements this year, just as a general tax levy, increase, is not the right way to go. But that's a discussion we have to have as a board. We've worked very well as a board together over this last year, and I'm very impressed with the way the board has been working together, and I hope that we will continue that dialogue. But I agree, it's very difficult as a taxpayer now to sit here and hear us talk about exceeding the cap. So I'll make it clear, I don't want to exceed the cap. I really don't. I'm not sure which direction it's going to go. Hopefully it'll be closer. If we do exceed the cap, I hope it's much closer to 2% than where we are now, because I'm certainly not going to vote for a 17 or 18% budget. So,
and also part of the issue is last year there were a number of municipalities who their backs were up against the wall. They realized, hey, there's no way we can possibly not exceed the cap. Tried to enact legislation, it wasn't enacted properly, and now they're
essentially in receivership with control.
Basically,
which is what you don't want to be, because our 1.2% for bonding will never happen again.
Exactly.
So
we'll be paying 5%, 8% for bonding.
You ask us, what use is this hearing? You guys are already decided. In a sense, honestly, the answer is probably yes. If something came out of the audience that convinced us that, no, it is safe to put aside and not do that piece of legislation now, then maybe we rethink it, but
how are we going to come up with something?
Right, so be honest.
Charlie, what did our tax rate base go down by this year?
Charlie? At this point.
Tax rate base went down by 1.8%? Right, our tax rate base went down by 1.8% this year?
The assessment receivers here, last year in our model, we used $312.3 million as our overall assessment value right now. This year it's 306.
Yeah.
So that's over, well,
that's math. We can't affect that.
2%. So if everything else was equal, all of our spending, all of our revenue,
maintain the same level of service,
the rate would go up 2% just because of the decrease in our
house values,
assessed values in town.
So we know that.
So you're starting 2% in the hole.
Right.
And that's not accounted for in the cap to the best of my knowledge. You have to make up for that in the cap.
That's the issue.
Yep.
So we started 2% before we start doing anything. So ergo.
It's all a part of the economy, and it's between the assessed value going down, mortgage tax revenue that we used to get that's almost non-existent. Sales tax revenue is starting to pop up a little bit, but still not nearly what it used to be. It's all there. And when you look at, the laudable, plan of the supervisor in the sense that he understands we need to move forward with the roads. In that sense, we just disagree on the way it should be financed. But you think, the state would give us a little bit more money than that. They give us $100,000 a year basically in chips, $115,000 in that ballpark. But we're responsible for all the roads, maintenance, bridges, everything that's in there. Yet they still throw this 2% at you. So that's just another unfunded mandate. And you really don't get I agree. What services do you really get out of the town? You really don't get much.
The most obvious choice that the town faces is whether or not to invest in, or to maintain its roads by pavement next year. If
question
we
for
don't,
another day, but it's not.
But that is the biggest item on the table.
It's one of the items. Your comments are extremely well taken, and I mean that. And
tax cap versus the tax rate. They are two different things. The tax cap is total dollar versus dollar, tax levy versus tax levy. The tax rate takes that amount into consideration, as well as a drop or a raise in assessed value. But they're two distinct things. And the tax cap is just gauged against levy versus levy.
But the diminution in gross value is bad.
Certainly.
The drop,
Just-
the
I got-
drop
look,
in assessed
gotta
value.
make it very plain.
But that has nothing to do with the tax cap vote.
No.
No, not with the vote.
I think that's one of the points we're trying to make. So your comments, again, very well taken, they're appropriate.
You want
As
to
it
know
rela-
what?
Wait, as it relates to a discussion associated with budgetary items, and we will have further open discussion on that. But with what we're preliminarily confronted with, I think that the tenor of what you're hearing is that it borders on being irresponsible and not meeting our fiduciary obligation, just to give us the opportunity to exceed the cap if in the end, it's almost mandatory that we do so. I started to say it earlier in response to Mr. Martin's comment. Passage of this local law should in no way be misconstrued, at least in terms of this board's members' commitment to staying at or near the cap. And that's the dichotomy here. That's the distinction.
And that's what I think the public doesn't.
Well, I hope that's clear, and I hope that's
You know,
clear.
it seems
I
like
hope
an
that's
open
clear.
door to
I think
just-
it's important.
And I
Yeah, it's not-
understand that
we're not-
perspective, but that's,
We're not asking for a license to
Mm-hmm.
do anything. This is what we think we are going to have to do because math is math.
But I think it's very important that you don't walk out of here feeling disenfranchised. It is so important that you came tonight and that the other people in this room came tonight, because you're letting us hear now how important this is to you about the 2%, just passing the legislation to override it. At least I'll speak for myself that I understand. I want to hear from more people, because we hear the opposite end of the spectrum too. It's only a cup of coffee, raise my taxes. So it's something else we have to balance also. So it's very good to come to the public hearing, voice your opinion, send us an email, send us something on this, so we know
Help
what our
dissect the
constituents are thinking, because it is very important. You elected us. It's very important for us to also hear how strong our constituents feel about sticking to the tax cap and what's going on. I mean, once again, we're going to do our fiduciary responsibility so we don't bankrupt the town. But we do need to hear from the residents. So it's very important that you come to these, because I tell you, most board meetings, I haven't seen any of you at. And we did talk about the budget. We did talk about pieces of it, but I only see one or two familiar faces. Guy in the back. Guy has come to almost every meeting. Guy has been here. There have been meetings where Guy is the only person in the audience, and we're conducting business that affects every person in this town. I mean, I love to play in front of a full crowd. Please come. I mean, that's what you elected us for, and I really do. See me on Dr. Oz in 2 weeks. But anyway, make sure you come, because it's important. We need to hear from you, and that's what public comment is for. Please do that. Our email's available. Our cell phones are available. You can get in contact with us. Let us know what you think. This is your town.
At the prior meetings, the department heads presented their budget. And, we had some discussions with them. That's already been ongoing. It's not like it's a new thing. So if more people came, they could be more invested in the process and actually see where it's going.
Can I just ask one quick question on the budget then? Why are there raises for people?
The raises were negotiated in good faith at 2.67% under collective bargaining.
So I don't understand a lot about the
Well,
union.
well,
Is that negotiable now or not? Is
No,
that on the
not
table?
now.
That's done?
No,
That was,
we negotiated those for, I think, most of them are 5-year terms.
oh, okay.
And we got, the initial terms were 0 and 0, so favorable to the town. But I mean, the town employees have done a good job, and certainly 2 years ago in that terrible snowstorm, we were constrained by economics not to be able to do anything for the
No, it's
highway
just that-
department, although we tried.
There are lots of people that
Yeah.
aren't getting any raises.
And it's important to note, I want to make sure you understand, a lot of our employees, they took furloughs. We had furloughs at one point in time. Some did, some didn't, but a lot did. We also had a maintenance union that had a higher contracted, agreed rate through negotiations that actually dropped their raises. They dropped that rate down to a lower rate, and then we were able to negotiate, and we actually came to an agreement with the highway department at a lower rate. We're still, look, we were standing tough with the police.
And we
while
cut
we,
the body count.
Yeah, we're in arbitration right now with the police department because we refused. So we might end up, we're not sure where we're going to. We'll hopefully end up arbitrating at it at a successful level, but we refuse to give them the raises they asked for, the part-time officers. So we actually, those, you won't see raises in there. These are all things that we have to deal with the unions, and that's a difficult part of government.
They're not necessarily pleasant negotiations.
But sometimes they do step up. Yeah.
We do the best we can.
So the next meeting on December 10th, that's to go over the budget.
When is our next meeting?
It's not the next meeting.
That's not the next, okay.
There
When's the next
is, okay, let's
Yeah, right.
go through this. On Monday, December the 3rd, there is a meeting here.
The work session, right.
Which will be a work session on the budget.
Okay.
On the,
10th.
on the 10th, there will be a public hearing
Let them do it, so then
on
the
the
viewers
budget,
view the thing and be more productive in that sense. I think.
going through
Right?
inch by inch.
I'm for
Make
that.
some invitation.
On the 17th, we basically have to,
Fish or cut bait.
fish or cut bait and do something.
That's the vote.
That's
Yes.
Now, the work sessions are a lot more informal, so we'll take questions during, generally work sessions, you don't take questions, but in the budget, we'll take questions during a work session as long as, we have to be able to accomplish things. But we will take some questions during a work session. And then during a regular town board meeting, we generally have public comment at the beginning.
Right.
Public comment at the beginning is generally for something that's not on the meeting or something that you're interested in. To get on a future agenda. In the budget sessions, I would suggest we have a shorter public comment at the beginning and maybe do a public comment at the end of the meeting so that if there are any questions about what we discussed, so the board can conduct its business, then those questions can be addressed, or at least addressed at the next budget meeting after that before we have the vote.
So far, with admittedly far fewer people than are here tonight, anybody who has wanted to be involved in a specific item which is being discussed has been welcome to the table in a work session.
All right, thank you,
Keith,
gentlemen.
last year, did your
Thank
group
you.
meet before, when you showed up for the budget hearings? Did you guys meet before to talk about the budget?
In prior years?
Last year?
Yes.
You did, okay.
All right, we got a few. Rich, not yet. You can come at the end since you went once already.
My name is Tom Holland from Lake Katona. And just to be clear about this, because I've heard a lot of different things, but this is just a meeting to be looking at whether or not you guys should override a law.
Would be allowed to.
Right.
Yeah.
From us. Or who is it exactly that's going to make the decision? We're here as the public. Are we going to say, no, we don't want you to, and then you're going to abide by that, or?
We have to vote on it. It's
We
gonna
have-
be a, is it
You're
a
gonna
roll-
vote
Five
on
of
it.
us
Is it a roll call vote? or
have
is it
to
a
vote on it.
Regular
Yes.
vote?
So you're going to vote on this law, the five of you guys, and you're going to decide for the town, even though predominantly, I have a sense people here are saying that you shouldn't be voting on
Yes.
this. So you're going to do it
We've got
regardless.
to vote either up or down.
Why?
Because of the
just-
consequences if we,
No, so, but we have a consequence here of you have to stay within 2%, right? So, and if we don't, then we're in trouble, right? So if the rule is we can only go up 2%, I look at a budget that isn't 2%. So why isn't the budget 2%?
because the town has entered into a series of contracts over the
I-
years.
So then do we
which
have
take
to,
us through
do
that.
we need to then bankrupt the town in order to renegotiate these things? Or do the town people, or the town supervisors, or the leaders of the town, go back and renegotiate things? If we can't pay for it based upon a rule, what do we do then? Because going against the law shouldn't be the way out. It should be trying to figure out how we maintain the budget. And I hear what what we talked about at the school budget, but this isn't the school, this is just the town. So what do we do?
So
It-
you're
it
making
doesn't-
a suggestion that one option is to declare bankruptcy so we can it's a proposal.
Well, it's
We
a
can-
proposal. I
we
mean,
can
if we
talk
can't,
about that.
if we can't make the
not-
money to pay for our things, then what do we do?
Well, one of these.
If we shouldn't be breaking the rule, which is going over 2%.
Remember, it's the town, the same law which established the 2% cap, established a way of breaking it.
That's not really
So-
the issue. The real issue is some of the debts that have been incurred over 10, 15 years.
Sure.
And they're coming due now. The law was passed 2 years ago, not in contemplation of those things that are coming due now. Some of them include litigation, some of them include bond payments, things like that.
I understand that. I understand like the idea of budgets and how they work, but if we don't have the money, we don't have the money. Right?
Well, there's an argument that we don't give any town services and fire everybody, and not be in the business of employment.
Okay.
And you're in favor.
If that's your suggestion, I wouldn't
It's
suggest
not,
that.
no, that's not my suggestion. There's some people who have said that towns are not in the employment business.
Okay. I haven't heard that.
But I think if we took an audit, most of the people, they would like to go to work after a snowstorm, and they want the highway department to be here.
Well,
So
I would
there's a certain
further
level of
suggest that there's
service
a
that
lot
we
of
have
things
to
out there
maintain.
that show us that towns employ people, so I think that's,
But
I
there's-
hear the rhetoric, but,
There's a certain level of service that you expect living in the town, right?
well, we get so little service to begin with.
No, but-
So, I
but-
mean, it's
but what
very
you
limited,
get,
so
you
we
do
have a very
expect to get.
we have a very low threshold here.
But you expect to get it,
I
and it has a cost.
guess so, that's what it looks like. But, so, back to the point, though, so you guys are gonna vote on this, whether or not the town wants you to or not, whether or not we feel that you even have it in the right order. Right, so
Well-
which is first present, yeah, because I've heard you guys all tell us that you don't agree with the budget, yet a budget's being presented, you know, to you guys.
I haven't said I don't agree with the budget, incidentally.
I've heard a number of people say on the board, and we can go back to the videotape to see who
Yeah,
exactly
the-
said.
we're not voting on the
who
budget.
don't-
We're
who
not-
don't-
we're not
So we're
voting
not
on the
doing the
budget
budget
tonight.
today.
We're not doing the budget.
We're
The
talking
way-
about whether or not we should be
The way
doing
it-
the 2% rule, and I've heard, you know, one person get up and talk about whether or not we should even be voting on this, or the town should be empowering you guys to vote on it.
Mr. Hall, if you were
Yes.
sitting in my seat, okay,
Mhm.
the way town government works, and I've been doing this for a while, and I'm not comfortable with a 17% budget, as I said, but the way this 2% cap has been written, if you were sitting in my seat, the way it works, the supervisor presents a budget.
Mhm.
The supervisor is the one he's the chief financial officer of the town.
Okay.
He presents the budget to the town board. Then at that point, we start working, we go through it line by line, department, we go through the budget. He decided to have it open a little bit in the beginning. We talked about meetings before where he had the department heads come in. But until his budget is presented to us, we cannot work on it. The way the state has it acted, this 2% tax cap, you have a certain period of time, as I rely on counsel. He's counsel for the town. He's your counsel too. He's counsel to the
He's
town,
our
to the town
counsel.
board, okay?
Yeah, I get
So
it.
if you were sitting in my seat and he's telling you, it is our responsibility that if we don't vote on this, and God forbid, we end up having to exceed that cap, we are going to possibly have the state come into the town and have to, you know, manage these funds or have penalties. This is what my consideration is. This is what I have to think about. I asked council tonight once already, we had the public hearing. Do we still have to vote tonight, or can we push the vote off for another week or two till we hear a little bit more so it gets filed? That's a question, and we're gonna have to, you know, that's more and more, I'm leaning in that direction. If there's any other time we can have with the budget before we have to do this vote, I'm willing to go down that road too. That's why these public hearings are good to hear from the public. But you have to understand the position. I think John Papalardo, Councilman Papalardo, eloquently said it. This is not an indication of any of the board members that we want to vote for this. That it shouldn't be an indication that we want to vote for a higher tax rate. It's just that we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing in our elected positions for the town, that we're not going to put the town at any further jeopardy once we were presented with a budget like this. That's the best way I can explain it from my position right now. I understand what you're saying completely.
So then, are we saying that our supervisor should not have even put forth this budget then? Because
No, that's his job. His job is
because-
to put forth the budget.
But the budget, but he knew the rule before he came in, saying
Yes.
that it's not supposed to be more than 2%, but he presented it anyway. So are you not doing your job?
That's up to you to decide, ultimately. I think I was doing my job, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have done it, would I?
I don't know. I know what I've been presented with and what everybody has been presented with, but the question is, you know, is this the budget you want?
Yes, it is.
It is. Even though it's over the 2%?
Yes.
I would ask that you,
Okay.
you try to come up with specifics. If you have a proposal for us, or clearly
I guess
you're
my
not happy
proposal
with.
is that, you know,
Clearly you're not
that
happy with
the
clearly-
town, yeah,
Okay,
I understand.
was trying to, clearly you're not happy with the budget. We get that. Absolutely. And that discussion
The budget's
is still
one
on,
thing.
and you've got
The
lots
other,
of allies.
the other issue that we have is whether or not we should be voting on this. And I hear that you guys are all concerned about what the legalities are coming from the state. But it goes back to number one, which is we should never be in the position of going over 2%. And so I guess you got to go back and look at your information so that we're not in the
State doesn't say
position.
that this is never going to happen. They say if you think it's going to happen, here's the process that you have to go through. So,
And the
but
process
you're
is,
of-
so.
we understand. You're
So
of the
we have a
opinion-
rule, so we have a law that then has a way to short circuit it right off the bat.
Yeah, that's the way the law
And
is
in,
written.
and in
But
doing
was
that.
how it was written.
So it's written to say, do 2%, but if you can't do 2%, then do what you want.
And what's great about the law is it gives you this opportunity to come here and present your
But then it's
position on
irrelevant
it.
though, right?
Sorry?
It's irrelevant. If we have the law, but you can actually not abide by the law,
We could
by
listen
the
to what you
council.
say, and we could agree with you and then do what you're proposing. So that option
But
is
you've
there.
already been advised by council that you have to,
Right, so we're
go
listening
through
to
this.
him, and we're
Right.
listening to you, and we have to make a decision at some point. It's true.
But what I thought I've heard so far is that you have to, for the fiduciary responsibility that you guys have for the town, you have to vote in favor of this, regardless of whether or not we want you to. Or not,
If we believe that there is a reasonable chance of us having to exceed the cap,
And there
yes,
is, right?
then we should.
So then we're
then
already
the only
past that
prudent
point.
course
You
is
came to this
approve it.
meeting knowing that you were going to approve it, and that's all I think
Because
what people want to
Some of the
hear.
obligations were incurred a decade ago.
Yep.
You can't do anything about that.
Understood.
They need to get paid.
So then this meeting is just presenting some facts, but in fact, it's already been decided. So
No, nothing's
no?
already been- My mind hasn't been made up 110%. I want to, the more and more I hear
How about
from you,
100%? Was it 100% made up?
Are you?
That's ridiculous.
I know.
That's actually.
But your 100% comment was ridiculous.
I will entertain a lot, but I'm not going to entertain that.
The math
I mean,
is
come on.
okay.
We're given a lot of opportunity to talk, but if you're going to play
Understood.
that game, that's ridiculous.
But have we decided?
The math is.
No. Did you hear a vote
Okay.
yet?
No, I haven't. But
When
it
you heard a
sounds
vote,
like
then you'll hear the way the vote
everything's
goes.
led to the fact that we're here, and you've decided already.
With due respect, sir, I think you're beginning to become a little repetitive now.
Okay. Well, in
And
any
I'd like
event,
to
though-
hear
We usually
from.
love 5 or 10 minutes for most.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Richard, if there's nobody else.
I think
Wait,
there
this
was
seems-
one other
somebody-
person, yeah.
Yep. And it's-
Oh, there's a lady.
that's ridiculous.
Hi, Deanna Pastor, live Todd Road locally. And I, have some issues with the budget and that, and I understand that tonight is not the forum for that, so we can come back and I'll learn more about that. And just like, the room is full, and I guess it's usually not full. So I'm also guilty of not showing up to the work sessions and understanding fully, but, we all hear on the news and we see 17, 18%, and that gets our interest, right? So, you will come back and, when you're doing your work sessions and take more interest in that time, definitely. But what I'm hearing tonight about piercing the 2% cap, for me, it's all about incentives, right? So if you're saying, well, we're probably going to need to pierce it or we may not, but we don't really want to, it's saying, okay, well, I'm going to put this piece of cake right here, but please don't eat it. So I don't want to give you a piece of cake. That's just what I'm thinking. Thanks.
Simply put.
Yes, Charlie.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, what's up?
Hello. Just for the record, I'm Charles Duffy, resident of town. I used to sit right over there. I'd like to thank the board and Leo for producing this handout that we received tonight that has a tax cap calculation as to where the current levy as we sit is over the cap. It's very informative. A request too that, like earlier in the evening, if all of this could be posted online, and
Okay.
I think people could download it and understand a bit more about the difference between the levy and the tax rate, and where we go with that. Like Mr. Kelly asked, the assessments are down 2%. I want to make sure, when the research that I did to be familiar with the budget for the upcoming budget hearings, I want to make sure that we're using the same numbers in the assessment roll. I see in here we're using the 306 as opposed to the 312. I had an issue with using the wrong number last year. I want to make sure we have the final numbers there. And then I also want to make sure that we're using the right budget, that the one that is posted on the town as the tentative budget that was submitted by the supervisor. I think the revenues are slightly different in the handout this evening.
Yes, there have been changes made since that tentative budget.
Okay, very good. Just so we're all on the same page. With that in mind, we were saying earlier tonight that December 17th would be the night where we have to vote on the budget. And the law for the cap, to get back to the cap hearing here, the law for the cap has to be submitted with the Secretary of State prior to December 17th. So we want to be able to have a vote here, to be able to send it to Albany so that it can be in their books, so we have a law to enact or override. We have a meeting on the 3rd, a work session. You can call it an emergency session if you need to, but just a little more clarity to the audience of when, if we leave the public hearing open now tonight to another night, you could do that, to see when is the date where we might actually have a vote on the cap if it's not expected to be this evening. And that's all I'm requesting. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Richard?
John. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yep.
Thanks for being patient.
Two questions. First, when the town purchases health insurance for its employees, do we purchase that as a town only? My question is, can we pool purchasing power with the school district, other municipalities for purposes of purchasing health insurance? I don't know if we can legally, I don't know if we do, I don't know if it's explored. I don't know.
Yes, we can. Certainly with other municipalities. I've never explored the school option. But in fact, the option of pooling with other municipalities is very much on the cards at the moment.
Okay, because we only have 40 some odd number of employees, so that's an option that we have.
No, we don't have that many actually.
Okay.
But we have more retirees than we have employees.
Okay, but for purposes of purchasing health insurance, we can pool with other municipalities for purposes of trying to get some more bang for the buck.
Yep.
Okay, that's an option. Okay, good. Second question is referable to getting more information on the line item for the health insurance premiums. So if you add it all up, we're talking about $1.8 million. Can we get more of a breakdown without, I don't know if there's any type of HIPAA privacy issues to individual employees, as to just maybe categorizing, like Peter, you mentioned that there's certain people get a certain percent based upon, I guess, when they came in and started. So can we, for example, say employee 10, 11, and 12 started this time, they pay X percent of insurance, and this is what it costs? Because as we have it now, we have what's
That's some of the
15.
limitation is you don't want to identify the employee without specifically identifying the employee and leading into all their medical, there are some HIPAA issues there. It may be able to be broken down
But
more.
we need a consultant to help us out.
Couldn't we say that we have 15 employees that pay this, 20 employees that pay that? You
there
could
are
break
ways
it
to
down
break it down.
into something along those lines.
Yeah, just that without obviously protecting anybody's privacy issues, but knowing the different categories and when they came in, so to educate the public as to, okay, these people came in, it's showing the progression, these are the people that are contributing this amount, and how it's progressed that way. So, I mean, maybe we can do that before the...
The only problem I've noticed in this town is that our number of employees is getting low enough that it is becoming more and more possible to identify the employee, the specific employee, from general data.
No, I understand. So
I mean, ultimately, if
deductive
it's one
reasoning,
employee,
right.
you know exactly.
Well, even if it's showing a range of contribution and a range of premiums for individuals, maybe something just to give an idea as to where that number comes from, aside from one line item.
Right.
So we should have more detail than that, than
Yes.
radar or uniforms for $500. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
How are you?
Paul Lewis, I just wanted to say, I know there's a number of us that would not say you should not vote for that 2% or possibility of exceeding the 2%. I know when you do get into this in battle, you may well end up with 0, but you should have the option of doing the 2% if needed, so you don't get trapped like other towns.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Anybody else? I'm going to make a motion to close the public session unless somebody else stands up very fast. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye. We don't have to vote.
You don't have the only comment I'm going to make in regard to that is, this is a recent law, it's a new law. In the comptroller reports last year, there were a whole host of municipalities who should have enacted legislation or tried to enact the legislation and either didn't do it or didn't properly do it.
Right.
My thinking is the more time between you send it up to Albany and if they happen to kick it down, I mean, I think it should be fine. I don't anticipate any issues. But erring on the side of caution, my advice has to be, if you're going to do it, the earlier the better. If they send it down for some error or something, we have time to correct it. That's my only issue.
I mean, isn't it kind of boilerplate though?
It is.
Where could the error be? It's a boilerplate.
It is, and I don't think there, I honestly don't see where an error would be, but I just.
But, I mean, I just think, you know, you guys are not going to change your position on the budget because the cap, you know, legislation is there.
No,
I mean, you've made
I agree with you,
we're
Dan.
big boys here, you know, we can.
I agree with you, Dan. I agree with you, Dan. I just think that the public does make a point on the fact that, you know, it is kind of, you know, very difficult for them to be sitting here, not having that information, and now we're already passing this, and it seems like we just got this in our hands. I mean, I know we all know we've done more work on this, we've heard more about it, but I think I would love to be able to give the public one more shot at being able to come and listen to what's going on so they get a better grasp on what are those statutory requirements that that our hands are kind of tied with, and, you know, vote on this at the end of the meeting on the 3rd.
I mean, no, but Dan's right. I mean, it's no incentive to me. I mean, you know my position on the budget.
No,
it's no incentive because we passed this doesn't make me want to
and I'm
increase the
afraid
budget.
also we're spending a lot of time talking about this.
I know that.
Instead of talking about the budget.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is it's frankly a pro forma thing. It's, you know, it's just managing the paperwork, and we need to get down to content. And, you know.
So there are three things. Respectfully, Dan, I would respectfully ask, you know, don't characterize anybody's position associated with the budget until we vote on it. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I do mean it. Second piece is, I think we really have to defer to Anthony here. You know, in terms of timing. You've just, Anthony, you pretty much underscored how other districts waited too long and put themselves in quite a predicament. And then the third piece, Peter, is, and I'm not, Delucia, I'm not predisposed one way or the other in terms of the voting tonight or not, but tied into that timing component, are we going to hear anything different from the public if we continue the public hearing, or if we defer the vote, or if we defer the vote? And that's, I'm just opening it up for discussion. I'm not drawing a conclusion from any of it.
It might be somewhat imprudent to go against advice of counsel, quite frankly.
And that's what I'm struggling with.
Personally,
it's risky.
I think we would do better to concentrate on our time on discussing the budget rather than the procedure to get to one. It seems to me to be a lot more material. And I don't like the idea of taking a risk which council has made it pretty clear I don't have to take. based on that, I'm going to make a motion to adopt the cap. I mean,
Adopt the law, which-
to adopt the law, allowing us to break the cap.
I think it's interesting. I think it's what's the word I'm looking for? Not perspective. Perception. I think the young lady who came up and made the mention of the putting the cake out there. I like that analogy. And even though I agree with Dan, I think we've made it clear with where we all, from time to time stand on the budget. But it is that public perception that I have a hard time getting over that. I mean, I wish I saw more people in meetings. I think, but it is true when they see something like 18% or they see a number come out there, then it kind of attracts the interest to come to a board meeting. Otherwise, it's kind of business as usual. Oh, we're going to build a housing project somewhere. Boom! Suddenly you have 1,000 people in the room. You know what I mean? Other than that, even though it had been discussed, the potential of that 6 months before that, everybody comes right at that point. But it is perception, and I would love to. I don't want to have it be that we pass this evening, and then everybody's like, you know what? They're just going to pass anything they want, and we're not going to come to the next meeting.
I would suggest, I would love to have continued input from the public, but on the budget itself, I think is where the productivity. So I would say that we should offer that in next work session, that we're going to make sure that we allocate. Without totally disrupting the workflow, but we allocate time for people to come speak on the specifics of the budget. That's where we're going to make progress or not in improving this thing. So rather than spending time, giving them more time to look at the 2% cap legislation, which, as I say, it's a pro forma thing, let them have the input on the budget. Yell at us because they think we're spending too much on this or that or the other thing. That's useful.
I don't think they want to look at the legislation anymore. I think they want to look and see what we're doing to actually bring it to the 2%. Or, you know what I mean? That's what I think it boils down to.
And Pete, I agree with that. I agree with that.
That's what it boils down to. What they're upset about tonight, and from what I've heard from the majority of the people, is did you do enough work on this? You didn't even look at it yet. The supervisor proposed this, and you're just accepting it carte blanche that, you've got to get over it. Now, granted, we've all been on the board for more than most of us for more than 1 year. So we have an idea of what those responsibilities are, what our debt requirements are, and things like that.
The department heads came for weeks and weeks and weeks, going back to August, September.
So. We've all been involved in the union negotiations too. But I mean,
I think we should just
in filing
knock it off and move on to actual substance. But I'm not going to second it. I'll wait for if you guys want to second it.
No, it was seconded already. I think was it seconded already?
No,
it was not
I
seconded
proposed
already?
it, but there was no second.
I'll go either way. I think we should just move it off the table and get it.
I think one common theme that the audience should hear tonight is we really are elated that we have such a large audience.
Right.
So I think that's being echoed by all the board members, and we really would encourage you to come to work sessions and board meetings because you are, in many respects, our eyes and ears, and we do want to hear from you. And we welcome the help in trying to trim and work on an otherwise very difficult budget when revenue, unfortunately, is down. But we do have a motion, and I think
I mean, if we did this on the 3rd, though, John, I mean, at the end of the meeting on the 3rd, after we have another budget session, is the 3rd going to be devoted, is the 3rd a work session on all budget?
It's a work session on the budget, yes.
So at the end of that, if we talk on going that, and Leo could actually do a nice presentation, I mean, are we going to have the computer here on the 3rd to kind of be able to, the computer modeling on the 3rd? So I think if whoever is able to join us on the 3rd to be able to witness that computer modeling, kind of go through it, see what the numbers and what the different cuts are going to equal out to, and we're able to take a look at what each tax increase would be, and if we drop 2% here and things like that, I think that'd be very useful, and then we could call for a vote on this public hearing at the end of the meeting, and it may be fait accompli, as you said already, but at least the public gets a better feeling about what the internal workings are of the budget, and I think the 3rd still gives us plenty of time to send that to the state and file.
Well, that's the operative question.
Last year we did.
The only part of the question the lawyers over here care about.
That's not what we're hearing from Anthony.
Our esteemed town clerk just said last year we did it on the 5th.
Because we did it right. If we don't do it right, we got to do it again.
Wait, last year we voted it down last year. We didn't approve it last year.
We voted it down on the 5th, though. We did it on the 5th.
Right.
So we took the vote on the 5th and voted it down.
So you never tested?
Right.
Right.
We never voted for it.
Yeah.
But we waited till the 5th.
I think we
did the
I think we-
procedure correctly.
We voted on it, and we voted it down.
Right. That's correct.
Okay.
How does council
We're
feel
asking
about the
for your
3rd?
comfon level on doing it.
I
We're
don't
really-
work in the
we're really
Secretary of
putting you on the
State's
hot
office,
seat,
so
Anthony.
I can't speak to how, the 3rd should be enough time, okay? You can adopt on the 17th. If they had an issue, we should have time to call another meeting or address whatever in between the 3rd and the 17th. It's up to the board.
If you guys want to vote, you could vote, but I would vote for the 3rd. But you guys can do what you want.
John?
If there's no second, you have to move on.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
That's why I'm looking at you two to see if I've got a second. No?
The lawyer just said it's okay.
That's what
I'm sorry, but that's,
Okay.
We are putting you on the hot seat, Anthony, I'm sorry for
Yeah,
that.
hate-
But
hate
it's
to
because my
here's the
concern is that
question.
we're untimely. So if you're telling us we'll be timely on the 3rd, that might otherwise alter my
Here's the
position.
thing, okay? I don't work in the Secretary of State's office, so I can't speak to what they're gonna do or not gonna do. Okay, if you do it on the 3rd, from the 3rd to the 17th, if they had an issue, we'll get it up there right away. There should be time to correct whatever. There shouldn't be any corrections needed. The law is, I actually compared that law with another municipality that I know did it correctly last year, and it's the same. So it should be fine.
This is it.
If it's not
It's
fine.
boilerplate.
Right.
It's a
If
page
for some
and a
reason they
quarter.
had an issue with it, and they send it back down, then we have to call a special meeting and resolve whatever issue they had before the 17th.
You're confident that if we defer it to the 3rd, we'll be able to
I
pass
think you have
it?
enough time on the 3rd.
I'm sorry?
I think you have enough time on the 3rd.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry to do that to you, but
But-
I have to.
Thank you, Anthony. So I encourage all the people that are here tonight to come on the 3rd, learn a little bit more about what's going on.
Okay. The next is, and I don't know if we still wanted.
Close the hearing now, or no?
Yes,
the
we
hearing
did
is
close the
closed.
hearing.
Yeah.
We closed the hearing back before that discussion.
Now we're going to talk about the budget.
Yes.
So now we're going to talk about the budget.
It's only 9:30.
Too much time on that.
Yeah, I know. I
Boy,
agree. It was a waste.
absolute waste of an hour.
Okay.
No, you don't have to leave the public hearing, but you don't have to vote. We closed the public hearing. Public hearing's closed, but we didn't take a vote. Yeah. So we didn't vote.
We voted on
No.
closing the public hearing.
We voted
didn't
only
vote
on closing the public
adopting
hearing.
the law.
We didn't vote on adopting the law. We got the public hearing notice and that done. So now we could not ever vote, like we did last year, or we could vote. Yeah.
All right. I'm moving on to claims.
Can we get that out of the way?
Approval of claims.
Make a motion to accept the claims as submitted.
Second.
Discussion.
Let's just go through it this one.
Yeah, I'm not pushing you on that.
Oh, okay. Is Dana here? There's a $12,000 for Catamount. And last year we did the ski program, and then we canceled. What ended up happening? Remember?
She's right back there. Dana.
Dana?
Can we ask you a question?
Quick question.
Just something about what happened, or how it works, the mechanics of something last year? Yeah, I just wanted to ask you the mechanics on something last year. Last year was the no snow year, but we had the ski program. What happened with that?
It's great conventions, called Big Snow. So we
Okay.
ran it the whole season.
Oh, you did? Okay, all right.
We just did makeups if it was too icy.
All right, okay. All
But
right.
yeah, we did in 5 weeks.
Great, that's all I wanted to know. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you, Dana.
This,
All in favor?
I have nothing
All
on
in
the
favor?
claims.
Aye.
I have nothing on
Oh.
the claims.
I thought you were just about to tell
Aye.
me you had something. Okay, guys, we got a choice. Would you want to hack into the budget now?
Or what?
What?
Or what? What's the other choice?
Or go home, or go into executive session.
No, let's do, where do you want to start?
Okay.
What was your plan for this evening?
I'd like to start with receiver of taxes. I'd like to go through the 6 areas where there are major changes from a year ago.
Okay. So what line is receiver of taxes on? Where do you want to
What
start?
are we looking at? Are we looking at the tentative, or are we looking at this, or?
Well, you can look at, yes. You can look there, you can come at it any way you like. You can come at it in the budget preparation parameters. And you can...
What line is it?
The...
Number. Joanne, what's your line number? All right. The line, what are you? Line number?
Leo, do you want to come on up? And
I got it. 1330.
1330, okay.
Page 6.
Yeah, look, these things, oh wait, you're in the wrong thing. You need to speak these guys. Oh, okay, there we go.
It's attached to each.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's not. Okay, it's budget preparation.
Just I got it.
1330 is the receiver taxes.
How is that only $9,000?
Where are you?
How's that only $9,000?
Where?
What page?
No, Pete, what do you want to know? What line number?
1330-0120. That's a $20,000 increase, not including benefits. So how is it only $9,000?
Because of revenue.
What do you mean because of revenue?
You are right if you look at costs purely, but not if you look at revenue.
What do you mean looking at revenue?
All right.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, go.
You're subjectively looking at the revenue that person would bring in?
No. I'm looking at the fact that if you...
Where are you getting $9,000 from?
Yeah, it's a $20,000, 175 increase.
Yeah.
You know, I moved to strike that down by $20,175. We can't be creating any more. We can't be creating any more full-time positions right now. I mean, that right there. We had discussed this early off. I mean, that should be. I thought that was a discussion we had. I mean, I think some of this is an executive session, but I think there was a certain planning there.
Yes, there is.
That was not part of it.
There was a plan, I had thought. There was a clear plan to make the assistant tax receiver full-time for the next 6 months.
No, that was executive session discussion.
That's definitely executive discussion. But
We're talking about a $9,000 bump right here.
But I don't know. I still don't understand how it's $9,000. It's $20,175, and that doesn't include the benefit load.
It is in fact.
Where's your $9,000?
Yeah,
where's your $9,000 number that you're coming to get?
It's on Pete's sheet.
Yeah, it's
$9,208.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
That doesn't compute.
Well, it does, because included in that number is the revenue stream. $9,208 is the addition of half employees, because you can the deputy part-time full-time, offset by more interest and penalty revenue.
But why can't? You're just saying that that person's going to collect more based on that?
No, based on the adopted budget from last year.
Okay.
That amount of revenue is understated. So the estimate for this year is that much greater.
Oh, so we'd even have more of a savings in 20,000 if we cut that. I'm confused.
Yeah, I think you need to separate these.
Yeah, you need to separate those.
You said the 9,200 doesn't compute.
Well, if I'm looking at here, the salary is 25,000. Now the salary is 45,175.
Yeah,
if we leave that
additional 20,000.
Yeah.
Is increased revenue from interest and penalty.
Offsetting that raise. So if we still keep this at part-time, we save 20,175
plus the
offset in revenue. Oh, so and so plus another additional what?
It's already in there. It's already in the budget.
It's already within the budget, so it's
Yes.
only a 20,175 savings. All right.
If you
But that's
don't-
why that doesn't, that didn't, so we're still saving
If you don't make
20,000.
that position full-time, you save 20,000.
You save $20,000.
Yes.
And how much of the what do we calculate the benefits on that? Is it a buyout, or is it what's in the budget? Is it a $4,000 buyout, or is it an actual family, or is it a single?
It would be a
Family,
family.
what is our family rate now?
Do you want to say that?
Yeah, you could, yeah,
I think the net would be about 17.
17,000, so another 17 on top of the 20? So that's a $37,175 pickup, at least the way I feel.
Yeah, 0.66 of a point.
Yep.
Okay. There's an obvious risk in that.
Okay.
Well, we've always said that positions around the revenue stream, the core revenue stream, are something we want to look at very carefully, because mistakes in that area could have a...
Impact the bottom line.
Yes, a huge impact on the bottom line. So we'd better get it right.
All right, well, so now we have two things to think about.
Yes. And all I'm trying to do at the moment is point out the areas which are an issue, all right?
Okay.
All right, so that's potentially though 37,175 pickup.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see that on the Excel comparison sheet when we do this on the 3rd. Leo, anything we kind of pick up on this would be key. Thank you.
Okay. If we go to Parks and Recreation, all right?
What line is that? Line number?
Parks and Rec starts in around the 7,100 area.
Okay,
It goes to several pages.
right. No, 70, yeah, okay. It's 7020, 011.
Too bad Dana left.
Yeah.
Too bad Dana left, unless she's still back there.
Okay.
There is an apparent increase when you put revenue for Parks and Rec together with expenses. There is an apparent increase of 78,000 or 16%. In fact, that increase is solely due to the fact that there was $128,000 of revenue included in last year's budget, which we have never in fact found. Do you know that? And I mean, it was down in the administration line. Yes.
What do you mean found?
Well, we've never,
Identified-
there was no...
identified the source.
The source of
Because
that revenue.
they didn't run the programs. At the end of the day, if you look at what Dana's budget came out to, any of those programs,
Right.
she didn't end up running.
We went
So
through this when
that
Dana
already.
presented that.
Yeah, she
that we
went
didn't-
through that.
We didn't incur the costs, we didn't book the revenue where we didn't incur the costs.
Exactly. So that got reflected on the other side of the budget. We had gone through this, and Dana's shaking her head right there, yes. I mean, that's the whole key to that.
Okay. But that all of these comparisons are versus the budget we went in with last year, which shows 128,000 of revenue, which we never in fact pulled
Right,
in.
but did you take it down from the other side, the cost side as well?
The
I'm
cost
sure we
went down,
did.
that's why I put, yeah, Parks, Dana can explain it better than I, she's standing right here. Well, sitting right
Leo
there.
can too, but
Yeah.
I didn't use all my expenses.
You didn't use all the expenses, and the
Because-
revenue was also increased.
So
Yeah.
what's the net there? It's not the 128,000,
Yeah,
what's
that's
the
not
net?
the net.
The net difference is that 78,000.
All right.
That's the net, 78,000, including benefits.
Including benefits. Yeah,
Yes.
that's not revenue though. That's not, you can't state it like that it was not 128, I mean, that's totally misstated.
So, but it's 78, so what line do you have 78 on?
78 is the net
Right.
of all the Parks and Rec lines.
Okay, but didn't you, okay.
That's of all the Parks and Rec lines.
Yes.
So after everything, if the entire Parks and Rec functioned, it cost us $78,000 to run Parks and Rec.
No.
Is that what you're saying?
$78,000 more.
More than the budget.
In the 2013
Right.
budget.
Okay.
Than the 2012 budget.
Okay.
So there is a
Dana,
$78,000 increase in
do you
the
have any
Parks and Rec
questions?
budget.
Since you're here and you're the supervisor of the department, you can make a comment.
We knew this. We run
Yeah.
programs all the time that do not bring any money in. We run tons of senior programs that
Exactly.
don't collect money. We run lots of special events that we never even get close to breaking even to. It's part of living in Lewisboro. People like having Fall Fun Fest, Santa breakfast, winter celebration, the fireworks.
And any of the other programs that offset that, we didn't run those programs. So that other revenue that was projected in there, we didn't see that revenue because on the other side, we didn't run them.
Any toddler program that does not make a profit, we cancel. Any tennis program, any sports clinic, it has to at least make something after our expenses are paid down.
And it doesn't include the benefit load, though.
Yeah, what?
No.
That's 78.
No, what she's talking about. Not
Oh.
the 78 does include that, but the
Includes
program
the full-
coverage doesn't
okay.
include the full benefit load.
But the 78,000 does include the full benefit load.
It's confusing. You're talking expenses, you're talking revenue. This is pure expenses, if I understand it right? 78,000 higher than last year?
No, the net. If
The
you take
net
from
of
last year
revenues and
versus the net
expenses.
from this year.
What's the breakout? Is the revenue higher or lower, or are the expenses higher or lower?
Revenue's lower. Breakdown is. Revenue for 2012 is at 1,312,000 versus 1,085,000 estimate for 2013.
Yeah, we're bringing
In expenses?
And the expenses are 38,000 less than in 2012.
And Dana lowered her expenses, but she also lowered her revenue projections in the budget that she prepared for
Right,
supervisor.
the biggest hit we hit was with the day camp because the kids.
Enrollment went down with the day
Correct.
camp. I remember when the budget committee met, we met in Dana's office, we did raise fees in certain areas, and we did better in 2011. But in 2012, our numbers, the day camp numbers have been dropping off. We did very well with the pool numbers this year, but the day camp numbers went down. So it's questionable whether to retool those figures. I mean, we could sit down and work on that again in Dana's office if she'd like to take a look at that.
I mean, that sounds to me like a program by program look, because it's 38,000 less in expense and 260,000.
So we lost one bus. Remember we
revenue, you know,
Yeah.
just, it may be appropriate, but it's got to look program by program.
Right,
Is
yep.
it exactly right? Is there more room on the expense side because of the lack of revenue?
And you always have to account for the fact that your pool numbers might be up or down in the year because of the weather.
Yeah, we did very well this year with the pool numbers on the weather, and we did well with memberships and everything else. But camp, we lost an entire Team Trex bus this year too that we thought we were going to have.
50 kids, and then
Yeah.
we lost another 50 between all
Right.
the other camps.
But there's a lot of drivers for that. Some is the demographics and everything else. The economics and demographics. Okay, what else?
All right. The fourth area where there is a significant change versus year ago, if you net everything out, is the town clerk's budget, which shows a 19,532 positive.
What number series?
Makes a positive impact on
Right.
total budget of $19,000.
1,400 number series? Line series is 1,400?
It's 1410.
There's several areas that not working conferences, it's not just that.
Okay.
Also records management and other areas. And the two drivers for that improvement is more revenue is being estimated, and there's less stipends for that department than there was last year, in last year's budget.
And there's a reduction in longevity, pretty obviously.
So that's built in already. Right?
Yes. Police is the next item where there's been major changes, although without any huge,
budget impact, right?
No.
Huge budget impact.
Money from the state.
Well, we have, police makes a 20,595 positive impact on the budget. After including $20,000 for new vehicles.
It's a 2.9% decrease.
That's a positive impact on the budget,
Yeah.
yes. After including the 20,000. But not including the 25,000 rent, which shows up elsewhere in the budget. But there is a 25,000 rent increase, which is not mentioned under that.
They're going to be flat then.
Highway is the next one, which shows significant turmoil in it. If you ask, highway is kind of difficult because we moved the highway superintendent from the highway fund to the general fund. But in order to get a picture of how it stands versus a year ago, I've in fact combined them again. So you've got a 372,000 increase or negative budget impact versus a year ago, of which 235 is for the resurfacing, which I'm proposing. But it should also be borne in mind that highway, unlike any other budget, takes its own retirement costs into its budget. So it's got a 17,000 increase in retirement costs showing in its budget, whereas the other departments don't. There is also a significant increase in benefits of 73,000 for current employees. And those 6 budget areas are the main areas I suggest we should think about, because just about every other area is relatively unproductive.
Well, I mean, another way to look at it, though, that's one way to go through it, but if you go through this sheet where you've done your comparisons by department here, the department, or the area with the sort of the largest net cost, after, a highway or something, is this shared and technical services at $800,000+, which only suggests as a large item, there's more potential to find stuff. So that's another way we can dig into that particular category at some point.
Well, the other thing,
it's relatively, it's not showing it. Well, it's showing a $50,000 increase.
Well, the other thing with some of our contracts, and I'm like, we could look at the building department and we can see, God bless you. After Peter Barrett made
I didn't mention
Peter Barrett
building,
made his presentation, and it's questionable. One of the reasons why we keep a full-time building inspector and a full-time deputy building inspector is because we were talking about revenue and what could be brought in, and we had that. The other building inspector, the deputy, on the chopping block there a few times to go part-time. One of the things that I had advised the building department was to take some courses, do some things to provide more value. And my understanding is the deputy building inspector has taken, if not completed, the wetland courses. So we have 28,000 budgeted for wetlands inspector in the budget right now. Is there anything we can do with that? Either, knocking that out totally and having the responsibility going to Paul, or partial possibly at this point. Maybe we can't, you know, take advantage of the entire 28,000, but maybe we can take advantage of half of it or a proportion of it, so that some of those duties can now be done by the our building department. And that was always the plan, to move in that direction. So that's something else I'd like to try to, you know, get an answer to and look at for the next. I think we could see a little savings in that door control officer line. I know it's not the big ticket item, but I'm thinking about maybe $2,500 or maybe a little more. I'm not sure. I think we're talking about cutting out the overtime, a couple of things going on there. So maybe that's a number there. I mean, which, you know, a few $1,000s there. But the big, you know, item on the table right now, and I don't know if we want to attack it now or if we want to wait till the 3rd, is the $235,000 for the roads.
That is by far the biggest item.
I know. I've been very vocal about backing that out.
Back it out.
And I think I think though, Frank, it has to be noted that at least for me, I'm not backing that out with the intent of not doing work on the roads.
No, 6 miles of oil and stone at 30,000 a mile.
Well, I'm more of the line of using that 115,000 of CHIPS money to do what you said and work on those roads that could be oil and stone. But I'm more of doing a real resurfacing project as a capital project with blacktop. And fix those roads right now while our bonding rating is so good.
That's for bonding.
And it's capital project, put it out to the voters or go with a permissive referendum and get us back into speed where we need to be. Then we can use that CHIPS money and do that kind of maintenance work.
I don't disagree with you. We've heard the alpha and the omega with respect to whether the roads are great, roads are horrible. So leave it to the people to decide what they want to do with respect to the roads and if they want to incur the bond. What we heard is that 4.5%, where'd Peter go? Is he still there? 4.5% of the roads in town have to be done on an annual basis, right? Or 4.5 miles of the town.
Depending on what surface.
With the oil and stone, right, we can do 6. So I think we'll be okay. But you're right. If we want to do asphalt and people want to vote for it, then they should vote for it.
Well, it depends, in my mind, where the road is. I mean,
sure.
If it is a significant through road, then doing it with oil and stone is
I
is
just
a
like
major
to
risk.
repeat, as a general practice, I believe we should have a road budget as an ongoing current year budget item as opposed to bonding, because I think it's provides for better management. You associate that clearly with a certain number of miles you're doing and certain work. When you do a big bond, it kind of disappears into the debt, and what maintenance was associated with that, and are you on track? And it's there's some deferral that so if we do bond, I mean, I could talk about that in terms of if we're doing some catch up. If we really felt we let it slide and we're doing catch up, okay, maybe there's something to talk about there. I think as a general practice, if you're gonna do your roads, then it should be in the budget, because this is not a capital item like, one-off. It's a library with lifetime of 50 years, whatever. This is yes, it's a capital item. The roads have a lifetime, but it's an every year item. So that's just my generic sense about that one. But
I think the distinction needs to be drawn between what constitutes maintenance and what constitutes a capital improvement. And I agree with you, Dan, relative to the issue of maintenance. That has to be a budgetary item because it's an ongoing annual issue that we have to deal with. I think that all of us at varying levels are in agreement that the roads need to be resurfaced. And the concern I have with putting it in the budget is that we're discussing the roads that will be repaved, whether it's by virtue of asphalt or oil and stone, but we're not talking about the ones that aren't going to be repaved. And I think we could conceivably have a public that votes for a budget which, no question, would have a significant tax increase in it with this line item in it, and then they're going to be set up for disappointment because their roads may not be paved. So I'd like to see it go to referendum. I think if we're going to put it to referendum, that we put a sizable bond of referendum, and we get the lion's share of the roads asphalted and done properly, and then we empower the voting public to make that determination.
The last bond was 15 miles, right? 15 miles.
We did about 15 miles of road.
Yeah. I thought too.
I would say, I like that approach because I really do feel there is a maintenance portion, but there are a number of roads where it's a capital improvement. You're resurfacing, you're redoing the entire road, just like what we did. I do resent the fact that there are some comments being made out there that we didn't do anything over the past few years. I know Dan's been on the board, I've been on the board, Frank. We did a lot of work with getting Chapel paved.
Yes.
We asked our highway department, and that, that is our highway superintendent's job. And we went to our highway department and we asked them, what do we need to do? And we had all of the dirt road study done, and that was the time to spend the money to get Chapel paved. And that takes a big ticket out of the maintenance for the dirt roads out that could be reallocated over time towards either maintaining the other dirt roads and working towards blacktop. I think you need to do a multi-year bond repaving project. I think it should be put together by our highway superintendent. And on top of that, that pothole repair line and that CHIPS line be used as a repair line and move that into a more significant line that, once again, projected by the highway department. Once we do that catch-up, as Councilman Welsh put it, I agree, it's a catch-up work on those more severe roads that we weren't able to get to. Get those done, and then we have that maintenance place, because these are 20-year roads. I'm more of a proponent of blacktop. If we need to stretch a little bit right now and use that CHIPS money, as Councilman Kelly said, to kind of get some of those other roads. Wakeman didn't look too bad the way Wakeman got done. I'm not a huge fan of it still. I'm much more of a fan of do it once, do it right, last for 20 years. And I think we do have to keep on top of those roads, because it was brought up by one of our audience members who we singled out that comes to our meetings, that some of those roads were done not too long ago, 20-year life roads, and we are having some trouble with them. So I think we need to keep, and I talked to our highway superintendent regarding that already, and Pete's going to take a look into that, but we really need to stay on that, and more on top of that capital investment.
Making claims against
exactly
whoever those people were.
Because if we're going to spend that money and do that for those roads, we need to be able to stay on top of that and make sure that they were done right. And sometimes maybe it is an underground spring or something that, we have no recourse. But if there is any recourse at all, we have to make sure that we pursue every avenue possible to reclaim that.
If we, a regular, we've been through the numbers before, and you take the 96 miles or whatever, and you divide by, well, I guess it's 80 something.
It's 84 by,
divide.
Let's say you divide 84 by 20, you come to 4.4 miles a year.
Which is pretty conservative.
I said 4.5, I was pretty close. No?
Yes, very.
Now, it all depends on how many he's done.
Yeah.
You've heard me talk about it until I blew in the face.
And so there's a certain dollar number associated with that.
But 4.4 of total repaving, or 4.4 of just keeping under repair. If you really get the town, if you get those roads up to snuff, that's why I think really, if we're going to look at sitting at a multi-year project, we need to have Peter come in again and sit there.
The 20-year life means that at the end of 20 years, you've got to resurface. It doesn't mean after 20 years.
Yeah, but Dan, if I paved all 80 miles in 1 year, I'm not repaving 4 miles next year. That's my point.
Yeah, okay.
So depending on how many miles you do pave and what you're up to.
But if you take it and you sort of average it out over time.
We did talk with the engineer, Pete, about this in the past. I'd like to get a little refresher on what needs to be maintained on what.
Yeah, that's fine. What I'm trying to do is back into, if you're going to do a bond, I mean, right now we're still paying the bond from the previous
that's correct,
work that we did.
Mm-hmm.
How big a bond are you prepared to go for? Or if the normal highway budget, if we weren't bonding, was going to be, $350,000 or whatever that number is.
Well,
are we going to start incurring, even at 1% interest or whatever it's going to be? We're still going to have.
But that's why we need Pete. What
How
are
big a
the
payment
Category 1 roads? That's what we need to know. What are the top Category 1 roads?
I'm going
given
through
that.
the other direction.
I know that, but we
saying
can't do
how
all
big
of
a
those.
payment are you willing to?
I agree with you.
Saddle the town with going forward for the next, how many years would a bond be for? I don't know.
It depends.
I think that's one way of
Could be 15,
looking
could
at
be 30.
it. That's going to be a permanent part of the cost structure.
But I think
and I just feel more comfortable if it just went right up front into the operating budget for all to see.
I feel more comfortable getting that from the highway department, putting that, if it's $1 million number or $2 million, but then putting it out to the public and let them make the conscious vote. Put it on I'm not talking about a permissive referendum. I'm saying put it as a balloted referendum
on election day.
On election day. Put it together, have the information out there, have it presented by the highway superintendent and the board, have the board give it, here you go. This is what it would look like, this is what the cost structure is, this is what it is, and put it out there at this point.
What do you do if each inhabitant votes pure self-interest? In other words, all the people on roads which are in bad condition vote in favor, and all of the people who have roads in good condition vote against. are we suddenly absolved of
Depends
our
on who has more.
responsibility for doing roads?
No,
No, not at all.
You're not.
And you continue to maintain them.
you continue to maintain them. This is a repaving project.
Okay, I mean, I guess I just think differently about this. I think that we should be doing 4.4 miles of road a year, roughly, as far as I can see, 2.2 miles of oil and stone, 2.2 miles of macadam or asphalt.
So where do you get that from? That's just arbitrary. You just made that up. I mean, there's no reason
What,
to
the
split it
split?
up. Yeah, there's no reason to split
Oh,
it 50-50.
the split I got to by looking at the list of roads and separating out those which went nowhere and were in bad condition versus those which are through roads.
I think-
Which are in bad condition.
I think now is not the time to put an additional $235,000 burden on the taxpayers. No matter, I think equivocating that to a cup of coffee is inaccurate. I think, like anything else, I think someone brought that out during the public session, during the commenting, that it's not just a raise now. That's the next raise is 2% on top of that, or 5% on top of that. It's a cumulative effect, and where does that eventually go? That eventually brings us in the same market of the school. And that's not where you're gonna go.
On the math there, hold on a second. If you were to restore some
4.75%.
Some road budget, say we decide, we know it's supposed to be 400,000, but we're not ready to go that far. We're going to start restoring this budget. It's going to be 150. I mean, that 150 is going to be there next year unless we take it back out again. But it's not, I mean, don't start bringing in like it's subject to some kind of compound interest thing where it's.
Well, it is. The budget is. The next budget rate is going to be, you're bringing up the tax levy again.
You're putting $150,000, you're going to
Unless you
distribute
find
that
it from
dollar
somewhere else.
amount over the public.
See that, well,
It's going to raise the tax level up this year, but if you just go in flat next year with no changes, the tax rate's not going up.
If you go in
It's not-
flat with no changes.
Yeah, so I mean, it has nothing to do with, 2% next year, 2%. Let's not mix those things up.
Dan.
If you put 150,000, that's what's in there.
But guys, I
You're
think,
not
I
obliged-
think we're introducing complexity where it doesn't need to be introduced.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying to them.
Either way, whether it's bonded or if we work it into the budget, there's gonna be an increase in terms of cost to, the general public, no matter how you dissect it. The distinction in my mind is that you're empowering the public to vote on a significant expense, and then they will make that determination. Now, the supervisor raises a very good point. We're not absolved from our responsibility if, in fact, it's voted down and we have roads that are deteriorating to the point of being dangerous. But in my mind, that goes to the issue of maintenance, not a capital improvement.
That's where the
And I,
chips
and
wanna
I,
come
and I
from,
think, and if it's important enough to the voting public to come out and either vote for or against it, they would be empowered to do so.
What is the difference between the maintenance and the capital improvement for me? Because
don't understand.
I don't see.
Well, the
I,
difference-
I,
someone's gonna have to define
I understand
that.
that Chapel was a genuine capital improvement. With that I understand. But when I repave, or when we repave, I don't know, any road, Kitchewan, which surely needs it, that isn't a capital improvement. That's merely.
Sure it is.
It depends on what you do with
Paving
it.
a
If you just go
filling a
smear over the
pocket,
top, it's not.
it's not.
If you do foundation work like you're supposed to do when you really do a road, if you grade it, crown
Excavate it.
it, and do
Well, you
all
build up the shoulders,
the
it depends on
subterranean
what the-
structures and everything else, that is a capital improvement. Maintaining is a little bit different. It's oil and stone, or maybe we go over it with a topping of asphalt with a 5-year life or something like that, or we do something different than founding, grading, excavating, leveling.
Maintenance is filling potholes. Maintenance is filling potholes, patching roads,
Yeah,
cutting
I
a section
agree
out, and
with
doing
Peter
things,
on that.
cutting a section out of the road and doing things. That's
Because the
general
integrity
maintenance.
is being compromised.
When you pave from point A, a mile down the road to point B, with all the shoring up, everything you need to do to add, you dress it first, you do it, and you come in and you blacktop. That's actual.
Fine. If you guys
Capital
want to call it
improvement.
capital improvement, I don't care.
Well, it's not a,
normal
wait a
place.
minute.
The point is,
Every other
let me
town
finish
calls that
what
a
I'm
capital
saying.
improvement
Hold
also,
on.
Dan. Don't
Let
say
me-
you guys. It's not you
But
guys.
we
It's
are-
standard practice.
I don't care if you
Talk
want
to
to
any
call it-
highway
I
superintendent.
don't care. Look, I thought there was some confusion over the terms maintenance versus capital improvement. You guys want to call it one thing or the other? Fine. It's something you have to do. okay? And it comes along and it's inevitable. You have to pave the roads. You want to call it maintenance capital, I don't care. It has to be done. And we know sort of the amount that has to be done. And we know what that costs. It's pretty simple to me. And then you just find a way to fund that activity. And you can either fund it through your regular operating budget, or we're talking about bonding. But you know, so I think we're getting much too, you know, we're throwing this nomenclature around, and it's a very simple decision. And I don't, you know.
It's simply the choice. If you want to go the expensive route that you want to go, or you want to go the cheap route that I want to go. 113,000 plus 50. That's CHIPS money plus the 50,000 from last year at Oil and Stone at 30,000 a mile. Well, covers 6 miles.
So I don't think it's a matter of saying the expensive route versus the cheap route.
Yours is 235,000.
It's how much work do you think is necessary to do, or is justifiable to do?
6 miles at 30,000 a mile, as opposed to 235 for asphalt. What, a mile, 2 miles?
About 130,000.
150,000.
130,000.
Yeah, I think it's close to 150.
But it
that's
depends
a mile
on
and a half.
how much. Both of those figures depend on the current state of the road.
How does this sound to everybody without arguing? And I don't think we're having a good debate. I don't think we're arguing. This $235,000 number, can we all agree? You discussed with Peter Rippinger, but we had a presentation a while ago on this, not related to the budget. We never got a presentation from the highway department regarding this $235,000 being really included, that he broke it out, what he wanted, and the whole thing. You had a discussion here with him, but it wasn't a road discussion where we went over all of these things, what he's planning. So why don't we have him come in? Why don't we have him come in and really discuss this as far as what he's presenting, and whether, you know, and have the option of a bond. What he would do with a bond if that was available to him, as opposed to just putting this in there, and what he would see. So then we can make an educated decision on this. Does that sound like a plan?
Willingly have him come in. The reason we did not, in fact, go to specific roads, Peter and I, when we discussed it last time, is that assuming the work is going to be done next year, during the winter, that order of priority can change significantly, as it did with Wakeman, which virtually collapsed in a bad winter.
But we use that other CHIPS money to be able to do that, and we know we have $115,000 in CHIPS money, you know, banked coming in. You know, the other thing is, I mean, we discussed this. This is 4 3/4% approximately is what the implication is here, and you know, the hope would be, you know, over the next few years, if we slowly build into this, we go. You know, if we don't want to go out for a bond, we go with what Councilman Kelly is saying. We slowly build into it, into that fund, hopefully with the economy in the next few years, just with a little uptick, not even a big uptick, it brings us back to where we were supposed to be. The whole idea of bonding, when we did do the bonding and we paved over 10, 12, 15 miles of road, we were right at that point where we could easily start putting that money back in for maintenance. We had the CHIPS money, and then the bottom fell out of everything.
I'm happy to, you know, I'm not saying we have to jump back into our full road budget right away. The bonding kind of scares me, because as I say, we're sitting there, it's that $300,000 a year or whatever, it's still paying off that. I'd rather have this right out in front of us and not be committing future boards.
Why don't you want to spread it over time and regularize it over a variable economy, as opposed to hitting people with an increase at the bottom end of the cycle? This is the bottom end, or close to the bottom end of the cycle, although we've had discussions in the past. I think we're on an uptick.
I thought conservatives were afraid of debt.
Conservatives are afraid of spending too much money. That's what we're afraid of.
All right, so I think we can meet in the middle there.
I mean, it's pretty. I got to say, we are fortunate that our bond rating is of such that we can still borrow money in this time. I think Councilman Kelly brought it out. You know, 5 years from now, when we look at the bond that we got, we're like, oh my God, look at the pricing we got on that. We got 1 3/4%, and now it'd be 5% or 6%. So I think we'd be kicking ourselves in the butt that we didn't possibly get a whole ton of work done in a position where we're not laying this out and we got it done on the cheap. I mean, that's another way to look at it. We maybe do want to go for that $1 million or $2 million bond again and get another 20 miles of road paved at an unbelievably cheap rate that we'd be able to get it at, that 5 years from now, we're not going to be looking at that.
Right.
That's another way. I'm just saying that's another perspective to look at it.
I think there's a difference here between something where you're saying it's cheap money, we're building the library, build it today, because we know we're gonna have to.
You know, everybody doesn't drive
This-
over the library. Everybody
this is-
drives over the roads. If there's one significant
not my
thing in
point.
the town, it's the roads, and they are as capital gets. Look at the state highway department. Look at all that. Those are capital. Well, bridge is a capital project. Roads are capital projects. The fact that you keep trying to say that it's semantics, that this board is not saying, it's not the board saying it. Roads are capital. They've always been capital, other than pothole budgets. Roads are a capital part of your town.
My concern is that last time we did
the
this-
library deteriorates too. Once you build, it doesn't matter if you build a $100 million library, you've got to have a maintenance budget right after that to keep up with it. Some of the bigger buildings, between HVAC and how they last, light bulbs, electric, you could go on and on and on with what needs your maintenance for your oil burners. I mean, the bigger the building, the bigger the maintenance budget you have to do with it. So your analogy of the library compared to the road is faulty, Dan. It's not.
I think so.
All right, last time, my concern
Smile down there.
is that this town has had in the past, as I look back, a habit of borrowing on the roads and then not doing much after it's done that.
You can't say it's a habit. It was a one-time thing
Then-
because the roads had been neglected for many years. The highway superintendent came and explained why. I mean, I sat through it. I was there for it. And we went through the fact that we needed to do that because of how bad the roads were. That's why, look, the roads are at a point now where some roads are bad. They need to be done. There's a couple down in Vista. Glen is one of them that was shored up that was supposed to go. There's some over by Lake Katona. But it's nowhere near to how bad it was back when that bonding was done. If that bonding hadn't been done, holy cow, what kind of position we'd be in right now. Because always, even when times were good, other supervisors weren't spending as much money on the roads. Even with that number that was there, Peter and other highway superintendents, not Peter, maybe prior to Peter, other highway superintendents had that money in there, yet we still got in the position back in 2006 or whatever, 2005, when we had to do that bond. So that's not the panacea to have that money there either.
That just means that the budget was not enough?
Oh, let's just have unlimited. No, it has to be managed correctly. It's not that's a typical answer, that the budget wasn't enough. No, it has to be managed correctly. There has to be controls in place, and it has to be managed correctly.
Well, I don't know, yes, when you talk about a operation with lots of different moving parts, the paving is it's very identifiable, right? It's, you do X number of miles, and it's either the roads deteriorate or they don't. So,
I mean, we've got two models around us. We've got North Salem.
That's not a management issue.
North Salem goes out and it borrows each year. It borrows the money it's going to use that year. Not a big sum, relatively, but it would borrow the equivalent of, let's say, my 200 and whatever it is. And they borrow that each year, and they keep up with their road paving by doing that. You've got Bedford, which just spends it out of their budget. Do you know what I mean? That raises it in taxes each year and spends it each year. You can say that Bedford is a slightly wealthier town, but
Much bigger tax base, much bigger industrial base.
Okay,
much
but
bigger
they-
highway department. They
but
actually
they
have their
don't-
own paving equipment.
Yep, but they
So
don't.
it's a whole different ballpark. You're not comparing apples and oranges. North Salem does not have their own equipment. Lewisboro doesn't have their own
But
equipment.
they don't-
North Salem has a capital investment that they can actually. I mean, not Bedford has the highway personnel that can actually do that.
But they save on interest at the end of the day. Whereas, what?
Yes. fine.
They do save on interest. This town at the moment is paying interest on its ADA stuff. We're paying interest on a damn sight too many things. And that's one of the reasons this budget is in so much trouble, is that a lot of these have now come home to roost. And, there is a big interest part in this budget.
All right, but now's not the time to cure by bleeding, It's
Hey,
not
when
the-
I was in the army, they did that the whole time.
I'm sure. But now's not the time to do that. It's
Didn't
not
they
the
have-
time to soak people white. It's
Well,
just
don't
not.
you still use leeches?
Sure. Charlie, go ahead.
One thing that, and Mr. Delicious, give me a minute here. One difference between the highway budget last year and this year is the highway superintendent and the secretary is, moved back into the general fund. And it was moved from the general fund in '09 and back now. And so when we're doing comparisons of year to year, we have to keep that in mind now.
That's why the figure which I gave,
Right.
which was a comparison of the two, was you won't find anywhere in this document because I put it back together again.
Right, well, I pulled it out of the
Yes.
accounting report, where in the accounting report, the highway superintendent and the secretary were in the number. So and their budget, and the benefits for the highway superintendent, I assume was about 20 grand. We're in there, so I just said, okay, let's pull out that number, and so I got to a number of about 2.63 million of spend, and that has the 115 chips and the 50 of the smear campaign that we just joked about last year, right? Now, this year, it's 2848, 702, and if you take out the 235, and I think we still have the 50 in there above the 235.
Yes, you
still
do.
have the 150.
Yes, you do.
So those numbers are still in there. You're at about 2,613,000. So you're at about the same spend in the highway department. Not considering this large paving number.
Well, the 235.
Right, about 2.6 million to 2.63
There is
million.
still some additional upping
Right.
for next year in the budget, Charlie,
Right,
which is
the
mainly...
The item that I'm saying to keep in mind is the highway superintendent wants you to add back that person that we lost. There was also a person that was in the 2012 budget that's
Yes.
not there. And a lot of that was filled back in the 2013 budget by restoring the tree work line, the overtime line, so that person who left the highway to go over be a policeman, a lot of that money was added back in by adding the labor lines that were not in the 2012.
But Charlie, we spent that money this year too. We didn't, you can't stop doing trees.
Okay, but I'm just saying budget to budget, not actuals. Just to keep in mind, your spend is about the same because you backfilled losing that person with the labor monies. So it's just, whether you're gonna pave or not, the monies are about the same because the person, so if you wanna put that person back in, that's another 100 grand you gotta add to this.
On top of that.
Because an MEO is about 110.
At the moment, we haven't
And
gone
that's
as
not in
far
there.
as
It's not in-
debating. No, he's not in there.
Right, but if you wanted to add it back in, that's another 110 you're adding to the highway. Just FYI. That was my point.
Okay, yes. Oh, yeah, if we replace Llewellyn, we have a significant increase in
Right, I'm
in
just
the
saying,
highway.
because there is no decrease because of Llewellyn leaving, because they used that money to refill the other expense lines that
Yes.
we didn't have in.
So if you've got 115,000 or whatever in chips, plus 50,000 in the pothole fund, so you got 165,000. I think 165,000 is a pretty good chunk. We're not using that and devoting that to paving an entire road and doing the whole work like we did on Chapel last time around. That now can be spread out among X amount of roads, depending on how you look at it, in oil and stone and blacktop, be able to get us through 2013 with a bond on the 2013, ballot for 2014 work. That would be my proposal. But with sitting down with the highway department and going from there.
Sorry, what's your proposal again?
Backing out the 235.
Backing out.
Back out, back out the
235.
235 and
Maybe
put a
not
bond on
do
the...
more of what you mentioned, as far as not a Band-Aid, do the job, and then add the next, for the 2014, maybe add another 25,000 or whatever to whatever the chips in the 50, and slowly build it up to a number where then you're gonna have enough for a little portion of paving and pothole repair every year to keep you going.
Why is that better, Peter, than borrowing an additional 250 each year?
Well, I think the rates,
borrowing it or-
I don't know.
Borrowing it.
I don't know if the borrow
No,
plan that
that's
North
what it
Salem
is.
has is the answer. I'd have
Well,
to look.
sorry, but I mean, that's,
No, because I'm looking at the rates right now and the condition we're in. If we were in better condition, I think we should spend the money. If we were in better condition and we were getting the better revenue in right now and rates were different, I'd rather have the plan in place where we're spending the money. I wouldn't say to bond, and unless, once again, we were doing a really big capital bond, where we're looking at 10 miles of roads or something like that.
Leo?
Just one thing that you should consider. By putting the 235, or whatever the number is in your budget, you can spend it, or you don't have to spend it. If you bond, you're obligated to pay whatever that debt service is. You don't have any discretion on that.
You are locked in, that's right.
That's one thing you should
That's
consider.
right.
You gotta pay it,
Whereas,
yeah.
if you said, I'm gonna put the 235 in this year, and next year, all hell breaks loose, and you've gotta look for this and that and the other thing, you could come back and cut that back out of the budget,
Right.
you know, and say to
You go
yourself,
for a 10-year,
once you,
15-year bond,
yeah.
you've got that obligation for
you're-
10 to
you're
15
locked
years, and you
in.
can't do anything with it.
well, practically in the highway budget, what it, I assume in the past people have done, because it's flashed through my mind as well, is that if there is a certain amount of money in a paving budget, it allows you to survive the desperate winter where you suddenly have snowstorm after snowstorm after snowstorm,
You can move,
and you
can
smash
move
clean
money.
through your,
I don't think
your snow budget.
I don't think we want to raid the highway department in this case, though. I think we want, that's why I think, once again, the bonding, and maybe that's why North Salem bonds every year also for, because they don't want to have that temptation sitting there where they could use that money for something else. They want to make sure that their roads get done. So that might be, I don't think bonding at 8% or something would be a sensible, investment.
Okay.
But I mean, right now, with what we're looking at, I mean, once again, we're in a very tough time. I think people have felt this very, very hard. I mean, some people are lucky that they haven't felt it as hard as others that are having their houses foreclosed. I know it's happened in our town, so I think we have to be sensitive to that. And, I agree. We have to keep our roads passable. We have to keep them in repair. But it's a certain percentage of roads that are not in good shape right now, and we have to attack those. And that goes back to John. We're not going to be covering the entire town with this $235,000.
No, I'm not claiming we
Yeah.
are going to cover the entire town at
No.
all.
No.
What I am claiming is that if you do that amount of money every year for 20 years, you will make a very significant dent on the town's problems.
Mhm.
That's what I'm.
To Leo's point, if you wanted to spend this 250 and you said, this year we're gonna bond, we're gonna borrow the 250. The debt service on that would be what, 15, 20 grand a year? Over 20 years? If it's a 20-year amortization?
I'll tell you right now, and that goes back, I wouldn't be for bonding for 235 for oil and stone, though. If we're going to bond for any type of paving, it's got to be pure
Yeah,
asphalt.
because you get the value of a 20-year use as
Exactly.
opposed to a
Yeah.
5 or 6 year use.
So it wouldn't be that, 235 is not going to give you 4.2 miles of asphalt. I mean, you're going to have to bond for probably close to $500,000.
Maybe more.
No, you could get, it's about 100, it depends. If you get it, the other thing too, you get more bang for your buck. When we bonded back then, we got more mileage out of it because we did $2 million borrows or whatever
Right.
they were. So you get a lot more bang for your buck out of that.
15
Yeah. Or $1.5 million, I forget what Leo, what was the numbers on that? $1.5 million? Yeah, $1.5 million. So 700,000. We did it 700 each year, 750 each year, something like that. So we got a lot of bang for our buck back then.
Okay. Guys, what scares me is that the cost of doing a road, when you don't do it, I mean, what the heck is going to be the cost of doing the couple of roads near your house?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have pretty well totally destroyed them.
Well, I wouldn't say that. Look, once again, it's what look, Glen is not, I've seen roads that are totally destroyed. I mean, Glen is not totally destroyed. Glen is not in great shape. Some parts of that Lockwood area aren't in great shape, but they're not totally destroyed. They're very drivable. I mean, and the highway department has maintained and filled the potholes and done. Is it time to do them? Without a doubt. And you don't want to have the shoulders they built up the shoulders on those, getting them ready to pave. I mean, remember, we've got grant money for Laurel.
Yes, if we can ever, if anybody ever pays.
No, that grant money's there.
Yes, but yeah, it's there, but.
But you gotta also, it wasn't.
But you've got to get the state.
Yes.
To release it.
But Peter, but look, the other thing though, Peter, is he wasn't just gonna take that grant money and pave Laurel. The idea and why he didn't move on it was he was gonna pave that whole area. He was gonna do Glen and Laurel and get that all done in one paving. He doesn't wanna call a paving contractor out to just do that one section.
Okay.
So that was the other part of the whole thing there.
Yeah, the setup costs, right? He told us what the setup costs were.
Exactly.
All right, guys, I mean, I really think we're laying up problems for our descendants. And I'd like to begin to do something about our roads. Gosh, you know, it isn't the most incredibly frivolous expenditure.
Yeah. But we can't say we begin to do something. We've done a lot over the years, and we paved Chapel. The accomplishment of paving Chapel last year cannot be underscored anymore. You know, I mean, my God,
$10,000.
Oh yes,
exactly.
And you could make the same case for at least one other gravel road in town, dirt road in town, that you could have a huge saving by doing something about.
Yeah, and there's a few actually over by where Councilman Pavlov lives. What's that? Is that
East Street?
East part. That's actually considered east right there.
East and Silver Spring.
Right, East and Silver Spring. That, I mean, my God, the amount. That's.
What else are we gonna do?
I mean, we had talked about having somebody come in and actually do not paving, but do more.
Let's move on to the next section.
Agriculture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get out of here at some point in time tonight. Do executive session.
All right. Let's go to something which seems to be a little less contentious. Police. The only option I see in the police line is not to lease 2 new vehicles. The only substantial saving. Initially, I was a hard sell on that from the chief of police. But I've more and more become a easy sell on it because of the number of times I find that we've got a policeman on duty. And on the snow night, he had no car, which is beginning to get sad.
Are these things deadline? Is that the idea? It means they can't work at all, these vehicles?
That particular night, we didn't.
They're in the shop on a.
Yeah, they were in the
basis,
shop.
apparently.
Had we explored at least 1 year of getting lease payments out of the school, or out of that grant for one of the officers and get a car? I mentioned it to Frank. I'm not sure if the numbers work, but can we look into that again?
Yeah, I can look into it, but I mean,
that's one of the vehicle that at least that gentleman doesn't take one of our vehicles to go over there. That's one vehicle, and we only have to go for one vehicle, maybe. You know what I mean? To kind of see what we can do there.
I'm not as, quite honestly, he can use a normal car to do that.
Yeah.
Our problem is far more when it comes to the 4-wheel drive vehicles inside the town, inside the police department, because they are just not functioning well.
Yeah, well, you need to have that. You can tell by the storms and the weather patterns we've been having. You need to make sure that the force is equipped with the right tools to do the job.
And so I having batted this around with Frank for some time, have come out believing he needs to do that.
Well, I mean, if there's anywhere else we could do something other than that, I'd be for looking.
I know that we're already spending money on other things in the police department, and in particular on ADA compliance for the police in next year's budget.
Just to be frank at this point, I mean, I think we had a lively discussion about the roads. I think it's a good thing. I think, to go through all that, but I think if we tackle this next week, when we have the spreadsheet up there, and we can continue with what you have there, Pete, plug the numbers in, take a look at those things and see what kind of move and where we're at. You know what I mean?
We still have to do executive session.
And I think we're gonna, we can tackle a few of these other numbers in executive session, and then we can actually have those in the in the hopper next week too.
I guess I'm saying to you guys, there are 6 departments with real decisions, which I think we can take. And that receiver of taxes, parks and recreation, building, town clerk, well, not town clerk, because she's already done it all, police and highway.
Yep.
5.
And if you could just check into that, what we can do, what Paul's, and I can even make a phone call to find out what certifications Paul has to see if there's any flexibility there with the wetlands, you know?
Let's go into executive session.
Yes. Wait a second, I'm going to poll the board. John, you first.
Just briefly, I apologize, I missed last week's meeting and didn't have the opportunity to thank our town for working so hard during Hurricane Sandy. They should be enormously complimented. They don't complain, our town employees, and I thought there was a significant upgrade in terms of communication and in terms of our efforts. So thank you very much. That's all.
I'll have to echo that. I thought everybody did very, very well during the storm. I thought the town worked very well, and we provided such service as we could during the storm. We were, of course, delayed by forces outside of our control, the NICEAG people and so on. On another topic, the supervisor and I think a couple of other people have talked about seeking out various revenue ideas. I seem to notice very obviously the town park doesn't have a name. And I'm not disinterested in hearing from people about leasing naming rights for the town park, or for Fox Valley, which doesn't have a name other than Fox Valley, or Vista Field, which I think is just called Vista Field. I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to contact a consultant about either leasing or leasing for a period of time, or perhaps in perpetuity, depending on the value, getting naming rights for those 3 facilities. They're wonderful facilities, and why should we not do that? If somebody's interested in leasing those things, then that's something we should do. Yeah. Yes. But I think maybe we should talk to a consultant about that and figure out how much something like that would cost. And Anthony, you give me a funny face. Am I not allowed to do that, or is it? I don't know if you're allowed to do it. Okay. Well, I didn't know either. So I thought we have wonderful facilities that don't have names.
I can't see why not.
And right.
Bloomberg does it left, right, and center.
Well, that was my model. Right. Bloomberg does it, so we could do it too.
Have you noticed him holding?
What? You're legally allowed to do it. You're not legally allowed to, because we've been researching this for our own professional society. You're not allowed to put up like posters or
advertisements.
Right, but we could name it.
Sell space.
We could name it Smith Park, though, or Jones Park, or whatever.
Correct. There is legislation on the state
for 20 years or 10 years or
Dunkin' Donuts Park.
If they pay the right amount of money, Dunkin' Donuts Park is just fine.
About the dilution pool.
The dilution pool.
Are you going to front the money?
No, I'm hoping it just gets named that after I die.
So if anybody's interested in that, they should contact me. And if anybody's a consultant on that, they should contact me. I'll reach out myself to find some consultants to talk about what an appropriate price for something like that is, and who you talk to, whether we talk to corporations or private individuals. And I already have some draft documents concerning leasing those kinds of rights. So we'll work on that.
Dan?
Nothing.
Peter?
So I want to first say I enjoy the debates I have with Dan. We get along very well. We have a good. We haven't had a good back and forth for a while, so it's very healthy. It's always good.
Circulation going.
Always a budget time. So it's good. December 3rd is the winter celebration at the town park. Begins at 6 o'clock, including 6:30, including a tree lighting, hot chocolate, a visit from Santa Claus and the fire department generally accompany that. So it's a lot of fun. 6:30, December 3rd. Other than that, that's it. I said all my thank yous last week. I ditto the rest of the board on that. Everybody worked extremely hard.
Okay. I'd like to just remind everybody in town that both Verizon and Cablevision will refund your subscriptions, or whatever you call it, your costs, during the outage.
But you have to
But
call.
you have to ask them. If you don't ask them, they won't do it.
Very good point.
So let's do that. I don't think they really deserve a free pass at the moment. Secondly, I don't plan to read them, but there have been a significant number of congratulatory letters to the town for its performance during the storm, particularly mentioning you, Janet. Did you get that? Because Janet was very much, I think, the public face of the town during the storm when you called. That said, I would like to move that we move into executive session to discuss two personnel issues. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.